Chapter 742. Yuan Yingying was a commoner's daughter, who had been left behind by the Yuan family's patriarch. 2 years ago, her birth mother had passed away from illness and she had no home to return to. Patriarch Yuan had brought her back to the Yuan family and announced her identity. At that time, there was a lot of resistance. They believed that her bloodline was impure and that her status was unjustifiable, so she couldn't stay in the Yuan family. It was the Yuan family's patriarch who stood his ground and allowed Yuan Yingying to become the Yuan family's second Mississippi family master. Let's get down to business. I heard that the eldest miss is quite outstanding, and she even led her guards to kill our Blue Mountain Range's greatest threat, the demonic ape. An old man in his 60s interrupted Yuan Yingying's intimate conversation with her father and smiled at Yuan Wanbi. The Yuan family head let go of the two ladies' hands and returned to his seat as the family head. His face was filled with gratification and joy. Wanbi, you've done well this time. You've made the Yuan family proud. Men, bring the devil ape up. The 3-meter-tall demonic ape was strenuously pushed up by 4 burly men. Staring at the ferocious demonic ape, all the uncles in the house looked at it. They were both surprised and gratified. They exclaimed in admiration, "This is the evil demonic ape that wreaked havoc in the Blue Mountain Range. We've paid a great price all these years, but we didn't expect to die in the hands of Mississippi. Young Miss has made a great contribution this time. Your contribution cannot go unnoticed." All of them were praising Yuan Wanbi. Yuan Yingying was ignored on purpose, so she stood alone beside Su Yu. Yuan Yingying bit her red lips as she looked at her elder sister, who was the center of attention. There was envy and bitterness in her eyes. Yuan Wanbi replied modestly, "Uncles, you must be joking. How could Wanbi kill the demonic ape with her meager cultivation? It was a powerful senior who was passing by who injured her and instructed me to lead a group of people to chase after her. That's how we managed to bring her corpse back. Wanbi really didn't do anything." These words sounded modest, but she pointed out something else. An expert was guiding her. Su Yu wasn't just instructing her, but the whole team. Yet, Yuan Wanbi had taken care of everything, and it seemed like she was somehow related to that expert. As expected, the surroundings fell silent. As a matter of fact, the demonic ape hadn't been killed by Yuan Wanbi, and they knew that it had most likely been an accident. Hearing that there was an expert helping them, everyone was relieved. The Yuan family's master's eyes flickered as he asked, "Wanbi, why did that expert save you for no reason? Do you know who he is? Are you acquainted with the Yuan family?" The fact that he was able to kill the demonic ape meant that his strength was no small matter. At the very least, the Yuan family's head was not confident that he could eliminate that cunning demonic ape. Yuan Wanbi furrowed her brows and shook her head. "Senior didn't show himself, and we only heard his voice. We didn't see him." The eyes of the Yuan clan's patriarch flickered, without showing his face. "He heavily injured the demonic ape and left it half dead in front of you?" Many people in the room narrowed their eyes. What kind of divine ability was this? Yuan family's master pondered. There are only 2 possibilities for him to be able to do this. First, his realm is too high and he killed the demonic ape across space. The second is a soul body. In other words, it could be a senior divine master. These words caused the atmosphere in the room to suddenly freeze. Regardless of which possibility it was, such an expert was not someone they could afford to offend. Especially the second possibility, Almighty Divine Master. This was because those who could leave their bodies with their souls were definitely Almighty Divine Masters, or even stronger. "It's a pity that we weren't able to invite this senior to our Yuan family as a guest," the Yuan family's master said regretfully. His gaze lingered on Yuan Wanbi, as if he was waiting for her to learn something. Yuan Wanbi's eyes flickered, as if she had suddenly understood something. "Father, it seems like that senior was in the vicinity of the demonic ape mountain all along, but he didn't kill the demonic ape. It was only when I ran into danger and was captured that he attacked." She was implying that the senior had attacked for her sake. She had intentionally overlooked the fact that Yuan Yingying had also been captured at the same time. Moreover, I found his voice somewhat familiar, and I felt as if I had heard it somewhere before. Yuan Wanbi wasn't lying about this, as she really did find his voice familiar. Su Yu, who was beside her, couldn't help but stroke his nose as he thought to himself, "Of course you found his voice familiar. Didn't that voice belong to me?" Even though Su Yu had tried to lower his voice, he still couldn't conceal it. Well, the eyes of the Yuan family's members lit up. Could it be that the senior that she was familiar with had killed the demonic ape for her sake? Exchanging a few glances with each other, everyone's faces hid a faint hint of happiness. Yuan Wanbi had brought many pleasant surprises to the Yuan family, and if they could befriend a divine master because of her, then besides the Shangguan family, who would dare to provoke the Yuan family? Wanbi, no matter what, you did well this time. You brought back the demonic ape and brought honor to the Yuan family, and you even got to know an expert. The Yuan family's master had a smile on his face. The Yuan family has always been clear about rewards and punishments, so you should be rewarded handsomely. Yuan Wanbi rejoiced inwardly when she heard him. Even her father, who was the family's master, couldn't mess around with the family's rewards. Thus, as the family's master's daughter, she had to follow the rules and perform meritorious deeds for the family. Yuan Wanbi has made a third-grade meritorious deed, so she will be granted a chance to cultivate in the elixir pool. She will be awarded 2 7-star precious crystals. She will be awarded 20 crystals. The elixir pool? Yuan Wanbi was overjoyed. The elixir pool was the Yuan family's top-notch secret land, and precious elixirs were placed there all year round. As such, the water in the pool was filled with elixir's power, and if one cultivated in it once, it was highly possible for one to break through to the next level. As a 3 crystals half-fairy, Yuan Wanbi might even be able to break through to the fairy realm. As for the 7-star precious crystals, they were extremely precious elixirs that were refined from demonic cores, and they were extremely beneficial for one's breakthrough. As for the last 20 crystals, they were still quite rich. She was quite satisfied with her gains from this trip. Ah Qing, you have made a meritorious deed by leading the team, so you will be awarded 2 jade spiral elixirs and 10 crystals. As for the other guards, they will be awarded 1 jade spiral elixir and 1 crystal. After everyone had been rewarded, the Yuan family's master looked at his youngest daughter, Yuan Yingying. A tender look appeared in his eyes, but he still wore a stern expression. As for Yuan Yingying, since she led the team together with Yuan Wanbi, she will be given the same reward. She will be granted a chance to enter the elixir pool. However, before he could finish his words, he was met with opposition. A white-haired old man stroked his beard and said, "Patriarch, there are less than 2 months before the Yuan clan's grand competition begins. The top 10 all have a chance to enter the Dan pool. If the Dan pool's medicinal energy is depleted too much now, causing the Dan pool to be insufficient for 10 people 2 months from now, I'm afraid many of the branch families will be dissatisfied. Wanbi has always been respected in the family, and she's the proud daughter of the clan. She's also made a great contribution this time, so even if she joins Dan Qi, the branch families won't have any objections." But Yingying, the gray-haired old man sighed. "Forgive me for being blunt, but if she's like Dan Qi, it'll be difficult to convince the others. Moreover, Miss Wanbi deserves the most credit this time. As for Yingying, she was just following them, so she doesn't really count." Seeing the family head's face turn dark, the white-haired old man said, "If the family head really wants to reward us, we can do it in the family competition in a month. When Yingying obtains a ranking, we will be able to shut the branch family's mouth." Everyone agreed with what he said. They spoke one after another, treating Yuan Yingying as an outsider. The Yuan family head's face was gloomy. He was under immense pressure. "Father, Grandpa Pajuan is right. It's all my sister's credit. I didn't do anything, so I can't ask for a reward." Yuan Yingying stepped forward and opened her bright eyes wide. When the white-haired old man heard her, he praised her. Yingying, you're quite sensible. Not bad. Grandfather has high hopes for you. Since she was already in such a state, what else could the Yuan family head do? Fine. Yingying, you should go and cultivate properly. You must strive for a ranking in the competition. The Yuan family head looked at his daughter, who was being ostracized. He had already tried his best to take care of her, but the family didn't approve of her, so she couldn't do anything. Yuan Yingying went back to Su Yu's side. Her body shivered slightly, and her small hands, which were hidden in her sleeves, were still shivering. She wasn't angry, nor was she infuriated. She was just sad. Fine, the meeting is adjourned. The Yuan family head's interest waned. However, at this moment, an illusory voice drifted over from the sky. So, it's here. The abrupt words startled everyone present. The Yuan family head's residence was heavily guarded, so no one could intrude. Who is it? The Yuan family head stood up abruptly and looked around with his deep eyes. The illusory voice echoed once again. I just came here to verify whether that evil creature was eradicated or not. I was in a rush just now, so I came back to verify it. Since it's already dead, I won't stay here any longer. What? Is it that expert? The Yuan family head looked at Yuan Wanbi, who nodded at him with an excited expression. The Yuan family head was overjoyed. Senior, take care. He could faintly feel a wave of soul power, which shocked him even more. It was obvious that an almighty divine master's soul body was in the vicinity. What's the matter? The illusory voice echoed. The Yuan family head said, Senior, I can't express my gratitude to you on behalf of the whole Yuan family for saving my two daughters. I hope that you can show yourself so that the Yuan family can repay your kindness. The Yuan family head was quite excited, as were the other family members. They all knew that whether or not they could befriend this almighty divine master would depend on this moment. There is no need for that. The Yuan family head was quite disappointed, but it was still reasonable. After all, an almighty divine master was such an existence that the Yuan family wouldn't be worthy of his attention. However, your daughter is quite lovable, and I got along well with her. I will come here often in the future. If I'm in a good mood, I can take her as my disciple and give her some pointers in her cultivation. The illusory voice's words made the Yuan family head ecstatic. Take her as a disciple? If such a relationship were to spread, who would dare to harm the Yuan family in the future? Wanbi, why don't you thank the senior? Defeating Armies's face was flushed, and he was quite delighted. The other elders were also quite envious and gratified. Yuan Wanbi had really helped the Yuan family greatly. Yuan Wanbi's face became flushed, and she was quite excited. She smiled and bowed respectfully. Thank you, senior. I won't let you down, however. Before she could finish her words, she was interrupted by the illusory voice. Who are you? The sudden question caused everyone to freeze. Yuan Wanbi also froze, and the smile on her face froze. After the Yuan family's master calmed down, he said carefully, She is my beloved daughter, Yuan Wanbi. Senior, what do you mean? Oh, she is also your daughter. However, the daughter I am talking about is that little girl. What is her name? The illusory voice asked. Yuan Yingying, who wore a bewildered look, was dumbfounded. All of a sudden, she was pushed by something, and she staggered to the center of the hall. Her? The whole hall became deathly silent. Was the divine abode referring to that bastard who had returned from outside? Only the Yuan family's master revealed a delighted look. Senior, she is also my beloved daughter, Yuan Yingying. Yingying, why don't you quickly come over and thank the senior? The Yuan family's master was quite delighted. It wasn't convenient for him to give his daughter any benefits, but if a divine master were to do so, wouldn't his family have anything to say about it? Moreover, the Yuan family didn't have the fortune of being taught by a divine master. The Yuan family's members would probably go crazy with jealousy over such a great fortune. In fact, many of them might even change their attitude and try to curry favor with Yuan Yingying. After all, her fate in the family might change for the better. Okay. Yuan Yingying was confused, so she kowtowed and thanked the senior clumsily. Thank you, senior. What is your name? Why didn't you come over? The Yuan family's master was startled, as he couldn't believe that she could ask a senior's name so directly. Fortunately, the divine master was fond of Yuan Yingying, so he laughed and said, My name is Long, so you can just call me Old Long. Oh, Grandpa Long, Yuan Yingying giggled. Grandpa Long? The corners of the mouths of the Yuan family's members twitched. Only this silly girl would dare to call a divine master grandpa. Even the corners of Su Yu's mouth couldn't help but twitch. He had just created a fake identity with great difficulty, yet he was being called grandpa by Yuan Yingying. You should just focus on your cultivation for now. I will come back and give you some pointers when I have time. Goodbye. As the voice faded away, the Yuan family's members were still in shock, and they couldn't get over it for a long time. When the crowd came back to their senses, their gazes were like sharp swords as they looked at the silly Yuan Yingying. Their gazes were like torches, and it seemed like they wanted to burn her to ashes. They had originally planned to write the 4th chapter, but they had unknowingly reached the 5th. Chapter 743. Yuan Yingying shrunk her neck. She was afraid of being stared at like this, and tears were about to come out of her eyes. Uncle Su. Yuan Yingying looked left and right before she cast a pleading look at Su Yu. Su Yu opened his eyes. The soles of his feet felt weak, and his body swayed a few times. Congratulations, second miss, for being able to receive the guidance of a senior expert. Congratulations. Their conversation tore apart the silence in the hall. Only then did everyone regain their senses. The Yuan family's patriarch couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. Today is a joyous day for the Yuan family. Yingying, come over and tell us in detail how you all interacted with the senior. Yuan Yingying was confused. She repeated the story blankly. It was basically the same as what Yuan Wanbi had said. However, her narration seemed to carry a lot of weight. Her uncles and elders listened very seriously, not missing the slightest detail. After hearing this, they all looked at Yuan Yingying with complicated gazes. There was disgust from the bottom of his heart, but there were also considerations of benefits. Although not everyone was willing to accept him, no one dared to bully him in public. Now that things have come to this, everyone should understand, right? Yingying has unexpectedly obtained the favor of a divine master, and she has made a great contribution to our Yuan family, which is equivalent to a second-class contribution. In addition to entering the pill pond once, she will also be rewarded with 4 7-star treasure crystals and 40 crystal stones. The Yuan family's master was happy for his youngest daughter from the bottom of his heart. The white-haired old man named Pajun opened his mouth, but swallowed his words in the end. Thank you, father. Yuan Yingying's eyes were filled with delight as she returned to Su Yu's side. She, the second miss who was deliberately ignored, was enough to attract everyone's attention. Only then did someone notice that there was an old man who didn't fit in among the guards. He was wearing the uniform of a guard and had an extraordinary bearing. He had a sage-like demeanor. May I ask who you are? The Yuan family's patriarch saw that this person's temperament was not that of an ordinary person, so he did not dare to be negligent. Yuan Yingying hugged Su Yu's arm and answered, Father, Uncle Su is a wandering old man we met on the road. He's all alone and he's quite pitiful. That's why I brought him here. A vagrant? It didn't look like it. The Yuan family master's eyes were sharp. He shook his head. Rather than calling this young man a vagrant, it was more likely that he was a martial artist in dire straits. The other party didn't seem to have any cultivation, but from the way he stood and the look in his eyes, one could tell that something was up. The Yuan family's patriarch saw confidence and calmness in him. He was definitely not an ordinary vagrant. The master of the Yuan family did not point it out. There were many people in the Blue Mountain Range who had such rough fate. Yingying's temperament is still the same as before. The patriarch of the Yuan family sighed lovingly, just let him stay in the Yuan family. The northern palace lacks a cleaner, so just stay here with peace of mind. Su Yu cupped his fists at him. Many thanks to the Yuan family's master. All right, all of you are dismissed. Wan Bai, stay here. The Yuan family master waved his hand. When Yuan Yingying saw that Yuan Wanbi was still kneeling on the ground in a daze, she walked over to her and pulled her up. Elder sister, the senior has left. Quickly get up. Pa. After her palm was slapped away, Yuan Wanbi stood up on her own and turned around. She coldly stared at Yuan Yingying and said, Congratulations, my good little sister. You really hid your strength well, and I truly admire you. Yuan Yingying was stunned. Sister, what did you say? Don't play dumb. A cold sneer appeared in Yuan Wanbi's eyes. How could there be such a coincidence? You just happened to be ostracized, and that senior just happened to appear? It's clearly intentional. It had to be said that this woman's perception was extremely sharp. What's even more coincidental is that the senior targeted me on purpose. He wanted to use me as a stepping stone so that you could rise above me. Yuan Wanbi felt humiliated. Everyone assumed that the Divine Master was doing this for her sake, yet now, the Divine Master had personally appeared to correct her, which was tantamount to slapping her in the face. Moreover, the Divine Master would surely disdain to make things difficult for a woman like her, who was a complete stranger to him. So, the only possibility was that her younger sister was using this opportunity to step on her. Elder sister, I didn't do that. Yuan Yingying's eyes were filled with tears as she tried her best to explain herself. You don't need to say anything. I was just a fool, and I really believed that you were the same as you were on the surface. You can't blame anyone for that. Yuan Wanbi snorted coldly. Yuan Yingying still wanted to explain herself, but she was pulled away by Su Yu, who said calmly, Let's go. You and the eldest miss belong to two different worlds, and you will have fewer interactions in the future. Su Yu hated women like Yuan Wanbi from the bottom of his heart. It was obvious that he was a scheming person, and that was why he viewed others the same way. Su Yu wasn't targeting her on purpose, and he just wanted to help Yuan Yingying. In Yuan Wanbi's eyes, Yuan Yingying was using her as a stepping stone to rise above her. You are right. We belong to two different worlds. One is in heaven, while the other is on earth. Yuan Wanbi looked at Su Yu coldly. Su Yu calmly replied, That's right. She's in heaven, while you're on earth. You. Yuan Wanbi's expression became gloomy as she clenched her teeth. Yuan Yingying was in a daze as she was pulled away. Wanbi, how was your secret trip to the Shangguan family? After the room was empty, the Yuan family's master's eyes flickered with expectation. Yuan Wanbi's expression changed, and delight appeared on her face. Do you still need to ask? Does this mean that the Shangguan family is really willing to keep their promise and form a marriage alliance with our Yuan family? The Yuan family's master was overjoyed. In his early years, when the Yuan family's master was traveling, he had coincidentally saved the heavily injured Shangguan family's master, and the latter had promised him that they could form a marriage alliance if their next generation was of the opposite sex. At first, the Yuan family's master didn't take it seriously, as he felt that he wasn't worthy of the Shangguan family. However, in recent years, the Yuan family's days in the Blue Mountain Range had become more and more difficult, as they were constantly being suppressed by the Elixir Production Alliance. As such, they had no choice but to betroth his daughter, Yuan Yingying, to Zhao Yin in order to ease their relationship and win some time for the Yuan family to recover. The Yuan family's master was anxious, so he decided to give it a try. He ordered his two daughters to take the Shangguan family's master's keepsake and go to the Shangguan family. He didn't have high hopes for it, but Yuan Wanbi brought him some good news. The Shangguan family's young master, Shangguan Yonk, has a good impression of me, so he doesn't object to it. Yuan Wanbi's face became flushed as she recalled Shangguan Yang's handsome appearance and dazzling background. The Yuan family's master wore a smile as he spoke in admiration. The Shangguan family's master always keeps his promises. As expected of a great family, he still keeps his promise from 20 years ago in his heart. As he recalled his daughter, Yuan Yingying, a gloomy look appeared on his face as he sighed. Yingying, you are the one that Zhao Yin fancied, and it was Yingying who took the initiative to agree to the marriage on your behalf. You mustn't let Yingying down in the future, as she truly respects and loves you. Everyone knew that the woman who married into the Shangguan family wouldn't have a high status in the family, so she would suffer hardships sooner or later. However, the elixir production alliance was too powerful, so the Yuan family had no choice but to compromise. In the end, Yuan Yingying agreed to it on her own accord, which silenced the elixir production alliance. I know, Yuan Wanbi replied calmly, while remaining calm and collected. The Yuan family's master nodded. Okay. Did the Shangguan family say anything else? No. Let's just wait patiently for them to come and ask for our hand in marriage. Yuan Wanbi was looking forward to it. Su Yu went to the storeroom and took a set of servant clothes before he started cleaning the place patiently. At night, Yuan Wanbi came to the storeroom, followed by 2 servants. How is it? You're already so old, so this kind of work isn't easy for you, right? Yuan Wanbi asked as she walked toward him with a faint smile. Su Yu shook his head. I'm still able to carry the broom. Miss, I've troubled you. You didn't come here just to chat with an old man like me, right? Clap, clap. Yuan Wanbi wore a faint smile on her face as she clapped her hands. The servants behind her then brought over a round plate. 100,000 taels of silver. It's enough for you to spend the rest of your life peacefully, Yuan Wanbi said. Su Yu didn't even raise his head as he silently swept the floor. If you have something to say, just say it. Leave the Yuan family, and we won't have anything to do with each other. Yuan Wanbi's expression became ice-cold. She wanted to drive him away so that she could create an opportunity for Zhao Yin to attack him. Otherwise, if he stayed in the Yuan family, Zhao Yin wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Even if we stayed in the Yuan family, we won't have anything to do with each other. Su Yu raised his head and calmly said, Eldest miss, if you don't have anything else to say, then I'll take my leave. Yuan Wanbi's gaze became ice-cold as she looked at Su Yu's back. Don't be complacent, as I'll make you regret it. Su Yu didn't listen to her, and after resting for a moment, he went back to the storeroom and lay down on the pile of firewood to rest. In fact, his soul had left his body and was wandering around the Yuan family's manor. It's better to find a place to recuperate from my injuries, Su Yu thought to himself. If he wanted to find such information, he would have to go to the Yuan family's elixir production room. After a short while, he found all kinds of elixir recipes, as well as elixir recipes, which were stored in the Yuan family's collection. The place was heavily guarded, and there were at least 10 fairy realm experts guarding it, both in the open and in the dark. There was also an alarm formation, and even a mosquito wouldn't be able to enter it. However, it was a pity that Su Yu was just a soul body, and he was able to pass through the walls and disregard all of the defenses. Su Yu patiently browsed through such a large treasury. Su Yu ignored the elixir production techniques, as he had Tian Jizi's mysterious heavenly crafting secret technique. He didn't need to care about the Yuan family's secret technique. He only cared about the elixir recipes. Raging flame powder? Su Yu found one and looked at it. He then shook his head. Its medicinal properties are too strong, and it's suitable for a young and strong body. It's not suitable for me. After a long while, he found another one. Spring pill? It's also not suitable for recuperating my internal organs. My most important task is to heal my internal energy channels. He spent 2 hours doing this. The Yuan family had many elixir recipes, and there were many elixir recipes for recuperating one's body. However, It was a pity that he didn't find any suitable elixir recipes. Suyu browsed through all of the elixir recipes on the bookshelf, but he still didn't find any that he liked. It shouldn't be. The Yuan family is a family of elixirs with hundreds of years of history. Their elixir recipes shouldn't be of such a low level. Not only were elixirs for recuperating the body, but even the elixirs related to cultivation were mediocre. At most, they were elixirs of the early stage of the fairy realm. Suyu squinted his eyes and looked around. All of a sudden, he felt a slight soul fluctuation. It was a fire pool that burned all year round. This was a pool specially used for elixir production, and the flames hadn't been extinguished for hundreds of years. With a thought, Suyu's soul entered the bottom of the pool. Just as he entered, he discovered that there was another world at the bottom of the fire pool. There was an iron certificate lying flat on a giant rock. The iron certificate was densely engraved with small words. They were all elixir recipes, and they were all elixir recipes of higher levels. The Yuan family had indeed hidden precious elixir recipes in case of any accident. Pure Yang Vital Return Pill? Suyu quickly found a high-level elixir recipe for recuperating the body from the iron certificate. It was effective for anyone below the Divine Master realm, and it was most effective for early-stage fairies. It can nourish the internal energy channels and invigorate the damaged energy channels. Its medicinal properties are mild, and it can be taken continuously. Suyu's eyes lit up. This was the elixir recipe he needed. Suyu was very satisfied as he quickly memorized the elixir recipe's ingredients and refining method. Seeing that he had ample time, Suyu continued flipping through the pages. Fairy Expansion Pill, the elixir that can increase the chances of breaking through to the fairy realm by 30%. Suyu's eyes lit up. He had the Cloud Galloping Horse, so he didn't have to worry about breaking through to the fairy realm. This elixir's failure rate is extremely high. Its ingredients are complex and precious, so it needs to be refined with caution. After the elixir recipe, there was a note written by the Yuan family to warn their descendants. Extremely high failure rate? Suyu smiled confidently and read the elixir recipe in detail. After that, Suyu continued flipping through the pages until he reached the last page. Heart-refining mortal dust liquid. Suyu furrowed his brows. Although it was called a liquid, it was still a type of elixir. Chapter 744. The word, ancient, usually represented a subversive meaning. The ancient era was a mysterious and mystical era. Many peerless almighty experts had appeared, and the world's emperors had contended for supremacy. It was a legendary era. All of the items that had been passed down from that era possessed unimaginable power. Although not all of them were like this, they all possessed a strange magical power. Suyu looked at the elixir recipe in front of him, attentively. The heart-refining mortal dust liquid can increase one's cultivation, especially for the middle stage of the fairy realm. It can nourish the fairy farmland and condense vital energy. Moreover, long-term consumption can refine one's soul and slowly increase one's soul power. Long-term consumption can increase one's soul power by 30%. There was a small line of words at the end that said, "Note, long-term consumption by soul geniuses will increase its effects." Suyu's pupils contracted slightly. As it could only help the middle stage of the fairy realm, it could only be considered a high-grade elixir. However, its effect of strengthening one's soul was unheard of. The strength of one's soul determined one's comprehension ability. The stronger one's soul was, the faster one could comprehend cultivation techniques and walk further on the martial path. This was common knowledge in the martial path. Generally speaking, every time one broke through a realm, their soul power would also increase, reaching a corresponding height. However, it was extremely difficult to improve one's soul power on such a foundation. For example, it was extremely difficult for someone at the early stage of the fairy realm to increase their soul power to the middle stage. Even though Suyu was at the peak of the half-fairy realm, His soul power was only at the early stage of the fairy realm because of the divine nine-dragon cauldron's refinement and the accumulation of the heavens sun-gazing at air technique. It would be almost impossible for an ordinary person to achieve Su Yu's current state. However, the heart-refining mortal dust liquid could increase a person's soul power by 30%. What did this mean? It meant that someone at the early stage of the fairy realm could reach the middle stage of the fairy realm after consuming it for a long time. Such a person would surely be a nature-defying existence in JoJo. What excited Su Yu even more was that the small line reminded him that the effects would be doubled for soul geniuses. In other words, if Su Yu was at the early stage of the fairy realm, he could probably reach the late stage of the fairy realm after consuming it for a long time. In such a state, Su Yu could comprehend all kinds of cultivation technique. Moreover, he could accelerate time by 200 times. Just thinking about it made Su Yu's heart beat faster. He suppressed his excitement and memorized the elixir recipe and the refining method. I really didn't expect that the Yuan family still hid such a heaven-defying elixir recipe. Su Yu couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. His gains this night had far exceeded his expectations. Deep into the night, Su Yu's soul floated away and returned to his body. He had obtained 3 elixir recipes on this trip: the Pure Yang True Return Pill, the Fairy Expansion Pill, and the ancient elixir recipe, the heart-refining mortal dust liquid. Su Yu carefully examined the 3 elixir recipes. He did not recognize any of the ingredients, as they were all spiritual herbs that had never appeared on the continent before. Furthermore, even if he understood the spirit grass, it would still be difficult for him to obtain it. The crystal stones that he had obtained from the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion had already been used up. He had no way of purchasing them, so he had to think of another way. After a long day of traveling, Su Yu felt slightly tired. He closed his eyes and rested until the next morning. Uncle Su. Just as he finished washing up, a crisp voice came from outside the door. When he opened the door, he saw Yuan Yingying standing outside with a smile on her face. Her eyes were red, and it seemed like she hadn't slept all night. There was joy from the change of fate, but there was also sadness from her sister misunderstanding her. "Lassie, why did you come here? Why did you look for me?" Su Yu was quite fond of her, so he spoke kindly to her. Yuan Yingying mysteriously opened her tightly clenched hand and revealed a round, white pill. There were some mysterious patterns on the pill, which seemed like they were moving. However, the elixir's fragrance was extremely intoxicating, and Su Yu could tell that it was definitely a priceless elixir. "Last night, my father ordered someone to deliver the rewards to me. There are 4 7-stars precious crystals, 1 for me, 1 for you, 1 for my sister, and 1 for my father." Yuan Yingying wore an honest smile on her face. Even though Yuan Wanbi had hurt her the day before, she was still worried about her sister. She was probably trying to use her own methods to get her sister's approval. But it was a pity that it had the opposite effect. "Take it and cultivate. If you consume all 4 of them, you should be able to advance to the 2 crystals half-fairy realm," Su Yu said. Yuan Yingying was slightly baffled by Su Yu's ability to see through her cultivation. She shook her head and said, "No, isn't it better for us to cultivate together? Take this one and give it to Uncle Su." Su Yu couldn't help but laugh. "I'm just an ordinary person, so such a spirit pill is useless to me." After he paused for a moment, Su Yu said, "Second miss, if you really want to help me, why don't you help me find 2 sets of medicinal ingredients?" Yuan Yingying's eyes lit up as she looked at the ingredients and elixir recipe that Su Yu had provided. She then said in surprise, "Well, isn't this my family's secret elixir recipe, the Pure Yang Vital Return Pill and the Fairy Expansion Pill? Why does Uncle Su also have it?" Surprise appeared on Su Yu's face. He had assumed that Yuan Yingying was muddle-headed, but it seemed like that wasn't the case. Su Yu had disrupted the order of the ingredients in the elixir recipe, and he had even inserted several unrelated ingredients into it. He believed that an ordinary alchemist wouldn't be able to understand it in a short time, yet this silly girl managed to understand it with just a single glance. Is that so? It was left behind by an expert when I was wandering around. Does your Yuan family also have it? Suyu asked as he blinked his eyes. Yuan Yingying scratched her head in a daze and muttered in a low voice, Is that so? Fine, I have all of those ingredients. Uncle Su, please come to my room. Does she really have elixir production ingredients in her room? Suyu followed her into her room out of curiosity. Although she wasn't well liked in the family, she still had a proper place to stay. She had a large independent courtyard, which had a martial training room, an elixir production room, a resting room, a living room, a bedroom, a courtyard with mountains and rivers, a pavilion, and a small lake. Yuan Yingying then brought Suyu into the elixir production room. There were many ingredients and elixir production tools in the room, and the room was filled with the fragrance of elixirs. Judging from the traces left on the room, it seemed like it had been used frequently, and the furnace's fire hadn't been extinguished yet. Did this girl practice elixir production all year round? Our Yuan family's elixir production is only passed down to our direct descendants, so only my father and sister cultivate it. I wanted to help my father and sister, so I practiced it secretly. But it's a pity that I'm too stupid, and even though I wasted many ingredients in the past 2 years, I still didn't manage to make anything. Yuan Yingying pointed at a pile of bottles and jars, which were filled with broken, irregular, and disorderly elixirs. It was probably only the Yuan family's young miss who could practice elixir production without any worries. Just these materials alone were enough to make ordinary forces and tasters shrink back. However, Suyu was quite startled. He had the mysterious heavenly elixir production technique, and he would occasionally flip through it. He knew that elixir production techniques were the key to the success or failure of elixir production. They were also the most precious inheritance of an alchemist, and they were even more precious than elixir recipes. It could be said that without elixir production techniques, even if one had great talent and resources, they would still be powerless, as they wouldn't even be able to condense the most basic elixir. However, 90% of the elixirs Yuan Yingying had made had reached the level of condensing the elixir. It was just that they weren't perfect. She had almost managed to become an alchemist just by experimenting on her own. As Suyu looked at Yuan Yingying, he suddenly felt like the Yuan family had made an error in judgment, as they had neglected such a talented alchemist. Why don't you tell your father about it? I believe that he will teach you elixir production techniques in private, Suyu said. Yuan Yingying bit her lips and shook her head firmly. I can't make things difficult for my father. If those uncles learn about it, they will surely make things difficult for him. I want to be an obedient daughter and not cause any trouble for him. I will only tell him about it after I finish making elixirs. That way, the uncles in the family won't have any objections. Suyu looked at Yuan Yingying, stroked her head, and sighed inwardly. Even if she really became an alchemist, her uncles would still mock her and ostracize her. She had always assumed that people disliked her because she didn't work hard enough. However, she didn't know that it was just a prejudice, and no matter how hard she worked, it would be useless. You're really a good child. Uncle Su, how about I make elixirs with you? Suyu revealed an amiable smile. Yuan Yingying's eyes lit up. Really? That's great. I won't need to make elixirs by myself. Suyu felt pity for her, as he couldn't help but wonder how much she had suffered in the family. Yet, a strange old man, whom she had known for less than 5 days, was able to enter her heart. It seemed like no one in the Yuan family, from her elder sister to the servants, was willing or even dared to pay attention to her. Let's first make the fairy expansion pill. But, we only have 3 sets of ingredients, so we must be careful. Yuan Yingying took 3 sets of ingredients from the shelf and gave one to Suyu. There is earth fire here, and it's the most suitable for people like us, who don't have enough vital energy. Suyu nodded, then held the ingredients in his hands as he recalled the mysterious Tian elixir manufacturing techniques record. This book had recorded many different elixir manufacturing techniques, all of which had been collected by Tian Jizi in his life. Some of them were created by Tian Jizi himself, while others were created by others. One of them was an elixir manufacturing technique that Tian Jizi had created in the later stages of his life. It was the elixir manufacturing technique that he was most proud of. Extreme Limit Elixir Manufacturing Technique. The Extreme Limit Elixir Manufacturing Technique used a forbidden elixir manufacturing environment to create the best elixir manufacturing technique. The ingredients' purity limit, the flame's temperature limit, and the number of times it could be used to fuse the elixir had created a forbidden elixir manufacturing process. The elixir manufacturing process's three most crucial aspects were all at the extreme limit, and even the slightest mistake would cause the elixir manufacturing process to fail. In such an environment, even a famous elixir manufacturing master wouldn't dare to rashly try it. After all, an elixir that had a 100% success rate would have a 90% failure rate in such an environment. Unless one was a madman, no one would dare to try it. This was a forbidden elixir manufacturing technique, and ordinary people wouldn't dare to use it. However, even though the extreme limit elixir manufacturing technique had a high failure rate, if it succeeded, the elixir's grade would be astonishing. According to the mysterious Tian Jizi manufacturing technique, elixirs were divided into 9 grades. The same kind of spirit elixir could be divided into 9 grades. Chapter 745. If a pill could be refined into a boundless spirit pill, it was said that the pill would often undergo a mutation, giving birth to unpredictable and powerful effects. However, in the history of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, the number of ultimate spirit pills that appeared could be counted on one hand. Even if they did appear, they were common low-level spirit pills. In the past, Tian Jizi had used the extreme restriction pill refinement technique to refine a limitless spiritual pill, causing a sensation for a while. As for the grades of spirit pills, they were divided into elementary, intermediate, and advanced. Those that were effective for early-stage fairies were called low-grade spirit elixirs, such as the Pure Yang Vital Return Elixir and the Fairy Expansion Elixir. Those that were effective for middle-stage fairies were called middle-grade spirit elixirs, such as the heart-refining mortal dust liquid. As for those that were effective for later-stage fairies, they were known as high-grade spirit elixirs. Such elixirs were extremely rare, and there wasn't even a single one in the Blue Mountain Range. As for the elixirs of the Zhenlong world, they could only be considered ordinary elixirs and could not even be considered spiritual. The Immortal Expansion Pill is a low-grade medicinal pill. It's a pity that I can't even concoct a first-grade medicinal pill. Big Sister is already capable of concocting a third-grade medicinal pill. She's a genius of the clan. It would be great if I could have such a day. Yuan Yingying was filled with envy. Su Yu thought to himself, if you had elixir-making techniques, you might not be any worse than my sister. Yuan Yingying's talent should be higher than her elder sister's, since she was able to almost refine a grade 1 spirit pill by herself. Yingying, yesterday, your master appeared in my dream and taught you an alchemy technique. Do you want to learn it? Su Yu asked suddenly. Yuan Yingying was startled. Huh! Snapping out of his daze, he nodded like a chick pecking at grains. Yes, I want to learn. I want to learn it even in my dreams. Su Yu smiled and passed the extreme limit elixir manufacturing technique to her without missing a single word. Tian Jizi had passed away long ago, and his legacy had been severed. Now that it had been passed on to a person with good intentions, it could be considered as an additional hope. If Su Yu were to meet with misfortune one day, his legacy would be destroyed in Su Yu's hands. It was passed on to you by your master, and he asked you to swear that you wouldn't pass it on to a third person, Su Yu said. Yuan Yingying tilted her head and asked, Where are father and sister? It won't work either. Su Yu shook his head. Yuan Yingying bit her lips and said, "Fine, even if you beat or kill me, I won't tell anyone about it." She naturally didn't know what kind of incredible inheritance she had received. That was why Su Yu was making elixirs with her. The two of them each held a set of ingredients and started to refine the immortal expansion pill. Extreme limit pill making technique had 3 extreme environments: the purity of the ingredients, the temperature of the flames, and the number of times of fusion. The first 2 were not things that ordinary people could attempt. Only those who had a limited number of fusion attempts might be able to give it a try. Su Yu proceeded according to the alchemy technique's instructions, then proceeded to crush the fairy expansion pill's 8 ingredients, break its tendons, pluck its beards, remove its dust, and break its water. Su Yu controlled all of the steps meticulously and strictly. Su Yu had never made elixirs before, but the extreme limit elixir manufacturing technique was the work of Tianjizi's life. Tianjizi had infused all kinds of experiences into it. Even though Su Yu was a novice, he could still comprehend it extremely quickly. When everything was ready, Su Yu placed the 8 ingredients into the furnace according to the order recorded in the elixir recipe. After covering the cauldron, he turned on the earth fire. The device that controlled the earth fire could adjust the size of the flame, but it was only a rough adjustment. The detailed temperature required long-term practice in alchemy, which could not be learned from alchemy. Even though Su Yu had been extremely careful, he was still inexperienced, and as a result, a burnt smell came from the elixir furnace. Su Yu couldn't help but sigh inwardly. People only knew that alchemy was easy, but they didn't know how many failures were involved in it. Even low-grade spirit elixirs had to be refined through countless failures before they could succeed. Moreover, he hadn't even used the extreme limit elixir manufacturing technique. Otherwise, his failure rate would have been even higher. Su Yu looked at Yuan Yingying, who was attentively adjusting the flame's temperature. A pill's fragrance wafted out of the furnace, and after 2 hours had passed, the whole room was filled with a rich pill's fragrance. It's time to fuse the elixirs. I'm still unable to succeed in this segment. Yuan Yingying was filled with anticipation as she recalled the extreme limit elixir manufacturing technique's main point. According to the technique's records, just this small elixir fusion segment required one to inject more than 1,000 strands of vital energy. Moreover, one had to pay attention to the amount of vital energy, as even the slightest mistake would cause the elixir to shatter. Yuan Yingying took a deep breath, then shot out 10 strands of vital energy in just 10 breaths' time. Her actions were completely different from her usual clumsy behavior. When she finished, Yuan Yingying's forehead was filled with beads of sweat, and her face was pale. It seemed like she had consumed a great deal of her physical and mental energy. Okay, I've only managed to complete the extreme limit elixir manufacturing technique's primary level in the elixir fusion segment. There are still middle level, late level, and even top level ones. Yuan Yingying wiped the beads of sweat off her face. Her intuition was telling her that she had succeeded in making the elixir. As she was filled with anticipation, she opened the furnace, and an intense pressure surged out of it. Then, a light purple elixir flew out of it. Yuan Yingying quickly took out a jade bottle, then used her vital energy to send the elixir into the bottle. When an elixir has just come out of the furnace, its quality is at its most unstable. You mustn't touch it with your hands, and you must quickly send it into a jade container. Only in this way will you be able to preserve its best medicinal properties, Yuan Yingying said. Her 2 big eyes were staring at the elixir, which was rolling around in the jade bottle. Finally, when the elixir stabilized, 2 green veins, which resembled bamboo leaves, appeared on the surface of the elixir. 2 veins. It's a second-grade elixir. Yuan Yingying's mouth was wide open, and she couldn't believe her eyes. Uncle Su, what kind of elixir manufacturing technique did my master teach me? Why is it so amazing? My sister started learning elixir manufacturing when she was 9 years old, and she successfully made a second-grade elixir for the first time when she was 15 years old. She spent 6 years on it. Even though my father was quite talented, he still spent 5 years on it. Yet, I managed to reach this level in just a single night. Yuan Yingying couldn't believe her eyes, and she felt like she was dreaming. Su Yu didn't find it strange at all, as if she had only managed to make a first-grade elixir. He would have doubted the authenticity of the mysterious heavenly elixir manufacturing technique. Moreover, Yuan Yingying had only managed to reach the pinnacle of the primary level in the elixir fusion environment. If she could really send a myriad of vital energy into the elixir in an instant and fuse the elixir countless times in an instant, the elixir's quality would surely rise. When he opened his furnace, he found that it was completely charred. There's only one left. Yingying, you should refine it once more. Su Yu took the ingredients and spread them on his right palm. A faint Milky Way's radiance flickered before it disappeared. Yuan Yingying's interest was piqued, and she couldn't help but ask, "Okay, I will do it. Why do these ingredients seem different?" After Yuan Yingying examined them carefully, her face became filled with astonishment. It seems like the 8 kinds of spiritual herbs in them are purer than ordinary spiritual herbs, and they have fewer impurities. What's going on? Su Yu smiled and urged her, "Hurry up and refine them." "Okay." Yuan Yingying scratched her head in a daze, then started refining the elixir excitedly. After 2 hours passed, Yuan Yingying's face was pale, and her body was shivering. She was exhausted, but she was still in high spirits, and she stared at the furnace without blinking. Thud! The pill furnace opened and a stream of air surged. A deep purple pill soared into the sky. Buzz! An old hand, which was already prepared for this, held a jade bottle and accurately placed the pill inside it. Then, it closed the lid. The elixir pills rolled and collided in the jade bottle, making a crisp beeping sound. It was only after 3 breaths had passed that the pill gradually stopped, and the 3 bamboo leaves veins appeared in front of her. A third-grade elixir. Yuan Yingying covered her small mouth in shock. She couldn't believe that she had managed to refine a third-grade elixir. It's impossible. Anyone who can refine a third-grade elixir can already be considered a primary alchemist. Including my sister, our Yuan family has less than 10 primary alchemists. Yuan Yingying was dumbfounded. Without dozens of years of accumulation day after day, wanting to successfully refine a primary grade 3 elixir was practically a fantasy. Su Yu nodded inwardly. This was because he had only purified the ingredients by 50% on purpose. Su Yu had the Milky Way star sand, so he could purify them by 100%, which would allow him to reach the peak state. Once he reached the peak, the elixir would surely become a 4th-grade elixir. It was only because he considered Yuan Yingying's current situation that he restrained himself. Moreover, the Yuan family's attitude toward Yuan Yingying could not be considered to be friendly at all. Once a middle-stage alchemist, who could refine a 4th-grade elixir, appeared, the group of stubborn old men wouldn't be happy about it. Moreover, there was still the elixir production alliances spying on them. A middle-stage alchemist would be enough for them to harm or even kill Yuan Yingying. Now, let's try to refine the pure yang vital return pill. Su Yu's gaze was filled with expectation. Yuan Yingying nodded happily. Okay, but we can only gather 2 batches of these ingredients, so each of us can take 1. Su Yu nodded. After an hour, a burning sound came from Su Yu's furnace once again. Although he had made some progress in refining it, he was still far from being proficient in it. Yuan Yingying excitedly refined another 3rd-grade elixir. It was a 3rd-grade vital return pill. Its whole body was dark blue, and it seemed like a human's internal blood channel. It contained an extremely gentle energy. "Can you give this pill to me?" Su Yu asked. Yuan Yingying wiped away the black smoke on her face and revealed a bright smile. "Uncle Su, it was you who taught me alchemy techniques, so this pill is nothing to me." Su Yu replied earnestly, Ying, you misunderstood me. It was your master who came to me in my dream, not me. Ying shook her head, while wearing a serious look on her face. Uncle Su, you don't need to deceive me. I know that it was you who helped me. I'm not good-looking, and I was born in a poor family. Only my father doted on me, so how could I suddenly have a divine master's master? Ying's face was filled with loneliness. Chapter 746. She actually knew everything. Suyu was startled by this. Ying, who seemed clumsy, was actually quite intelligent. In fact, she wasn't any weaker than her sister. As he looked at the elixir production room, Suyu gradually felt relieved. If she was really stupid, how could she have come so far in the path of elixirs? Thank you, Uncle Su, for helping me like this. I'm really happy, as besides my father, there isn't anyone else who cares about me. Thank you, Uncle Su. Ying's eyes became moist, and it was unknown whether she felt wronged or grateful. She then threw herself into Suyu's embrace and started crying loudly. It wasn't easy for a girl who had no one to rely on to endure to this day. Suyu was startled, and he sighed softly. He stroked her head and said, I said that I would repay you for the meal. This is my promise, and it is what you deserve. People are as precious as they were in the beginning. I hope that you can continue to maintain a kind heart and continue to cultivate your alchemy techniques, Suyu said. Ying, who was lying in Suyu's embrace, rubbed her head against him. Her heart was filled with warmth and gratitude. However, I also hope that you understand that blindly seeking the approval of others is ultimately futile. Suyu seemed like a grandfather who was instructing his juniors, and he spoke sincerely and earnestly. People only look up to people with dignity, and if you show weakness and goodwill, they won't acknowledge you. Instead, they will look down on you even more, which will make it more difficult for you to integrate into the Yuan family and gain their acknowledgement. Ying seemed to have sensed something. Indeed, no matter how hard she tried, no matter how much she tried, she couldn't change her situation. What should I do then? Ying raised her head, her bright eyes sparkling with desire. Become stronger, Suyu said. Regardless of whether it is the path of martial arts or the path of alchemy, as long as it can make you stronger, you should work hard. When you were strong enough to suffocate them and make them look up to you, you didn't have to beg for their approval. They would also beg for your approval. I hope you will keep this in mind. Ying seemed to have understood something, but she was also confused. But my talent in martial arts is very ordinary, and my ability in pill concocting isn't enough to convince them. What should I do? Suyu calmly said, Let me confirm something first. After thinking for a moment, Suyu swallowed the pure yang vital return pill. As the pill entered his body, warm energy flowed through his meridians. Those withered and constricted meridians actually regained some of their elasticity. Although it was weak, it was undoubtedly much better than before. The stagnant Jinchi could finally flow slowly. Although it was slow, he could still use his spiritual energy. With a thought, Zhang Xian circulated his Jinchi, but it was extremely difficult for him to do so due to the blockage in his meridians. Suyu also felt like he was being pricked by needles, and it was extremely painful. Forcefully enduring the pain, Suyu revolved his energy to his eyes. His deep eyes suddenly turned pale white. The mysterious energy penetrated Ying's body and pierced her soul. With just one look, Suyu's pupils contracted slightly. As expected, your soul is different from ordinary people's. Her cultivation was at the 1 crystal half-fairy realm, but her soul was as powerful as a 3 crystals half-fairy realm. If it wasn't for the limitations of his cultivation, he might have been like Suyu, who possessed a fairy realm soul at the 3 crystals half-fairy realm. Such a powerful soul talent really made Suyu exclaim in admiration. He was talented, and he had experienced the divine 9-dragon cauldron and the heavens sun-gazing at air to reach where he was today. However, Ying had only relied on her talent. It was also because of this that she was able to rely on her soul power to explore the alchemy path by herself. Suyu looked at her in surprise. He felt like the girl in front of him was a peerless genius who had been placed in the wrong place. If she came from a famous family, then her soul potential would be unearthed, and her achievements in the future would surely be shocking. "What's wrong, Uncle Su?" Suyu asked as he blinked his eyes. His gaze was filled with naivety, as he was unaware of the terrifying potential hidden within his body. Suyu shook his head. "It's nothing, but I want to teach you a soul secret technique. It will allow you to injure and kill people who are at a higher realm than you. It won't be of much help to your cultivation, but it will allow your power to soar. At the very least, your sister won't be a match for you." Yuan Yingying was overjoyed. "Really? I want to learn it." Suyu nodded. Then, in the secret room, he patiently taught her how to sense souls and how to use them. In the end, he even gave her half of the white-eyed fire-glass frog's soul flame. Now, even an early-stage fairy realm expert wouldn't be able to withstand a single glance from her, let alone a 3 crystals half-fairy realm expert. His teachings lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. After she finished teaching, Yuan Yingying's aura was restrained, and there was a sharpness hidden in her simple and honest temperament. "Thank you, Uncle Su. Yingying will never forget it." Yuan Yingying kowtowed solemnly. Suyu smiled. "This is what you deserve. Alright, let's continue making elixirs. I need to make a large number of pure yang vital return pills to recover my internal energy channels, while you need to make some elixirs to increase your cultivation base. After all, there is still half a month before your family's assessment." Yuan Yingying nodded firmly. "Alright." But then, he frowned and said, "But we don't have any medicinal herbs. My medicinal herbs are all saved up from my pocket money. Now I don't have any money. The reward of 40 crystal stones will only come in half a month." The corners of Su Yu's mouth twitched. Elixir production was a money-burning business, and it was impossible for the Yuan family to support them in making elixirs. Hence, they could only rely on themselves. As Suyu looked at the 2 elixirs in his palm, he asked, "What's the market price of the fairy expansion pill in the Blue Mountain Range?" Yuan Yingying's eyes lit up. "You're talking about selling pills for money?" In the past, Yuan Yingying hadn't even dared to dream of such a thing. But now, she was quite tempted by it. The fairy expansion pill is one of the more common low-grade spirit pills, and there is no lack of them in the market. But, because of the lack of high-grade elixirs, a first-grade fairy expansion pill can only be sold for 2 crystals, while a second-grade fairy expansion pill can be sold for 9 crystals. A third-grade fairy expansion pill can be sold for at least 40 crystals. She then added, along with the increase in grade, the price of an elixir will increase by several folds. If it was a 4th-grade elixir, its price would be at least 150 crystals. But, apart from my father, only the Elixir Production Alliance's 2 alliance masters are capable of making such an elixir. As such, there isn't any in the market. Suyu remembered that the purchasing power of crystals in Jiuzhou was quite high. In the past, a high-grade divine weapon had only been sold for 4 or 5 crystals. 150 crystals were enough to buy a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. "Okay, I will come back shortly. You should rest for a while," Suyu said as he changed his clothes. He then jumped over the courtyard's wall and went to the Blue Mountain Range's main street. There was a sea of people everywhere, and it was a bustling and flourishing scene. There were many experts in the martial path, and Suyu could see half-fairy realm experts wherever he went. In fact, he could even see many fairy realm experts. Since there were so many martial artists here, elixir stores were as numerous as the hairs on a cow. Suyu avoided the larger elixir stores and looked for a region that had fewer people. After all, a third-grade fairy expansion pill's price couldn't even be sold for a high price in their store. On the other hand, his store lacked a powerful alchemist, so it could only make second-grade spirit elixirs. As such, it had a higher demand for third-grade spirit elixirs. A slightly plump shopkeeper was in the store, and his eyes flickered with a shrewd glint. "Old mister, what do you need?" The shopkeeper examined Suyu. He didn't look down on him. As Suyu surveyed his surroundings, he noticed that the store was quite deserted. There weren't many people in the store, and the elixirs it sold were quite ordinary. There wasn't even a single high-grade third-grade elixir. "I don't want to buy them. I want to sell them," Suyu replied briefly. The plump shopkeeper was slightly disappointed when he heard this. After all, there were many martial artists like him who came here to sell elixirs, and their elixir store would occasionally buy some of them. "Old mister, I'm afraid that you've come too late." The plump shopkeeper smiled bitterly. "Old mister, do you think that my store can still continue operating? As the rent is due at the end of the month, this store will be sublet. Now that we have a discount on our elixirs, you can take this opportunity to buy some." Suyu wore a faint smile. "I didn't even look at the display case, so how can I know that I won't buy them?" After he spoke, he took out a jade bottle. "A second-grade fairy expansion pill?" The plump shopkeeper's eyes lit up. "I really didn't expect that you were also an alchemist." The plump shopkeeper was slightly startled. After all, an alchemist who could make second-grade spirit elixirs should have a high status in the Blue Mountain Range. At the very least, it wouldn't be a problem for him to get an official position in the Yuan family or the Elixir Production Alliance. So, how could he possibly end up selling elixirs? "You misunderstood me, as I'm just selling them for someone else. What do you think?" Suyu asked. The plump shopkeeper pondered this matter for a moment, then shook his head. "It's really a pity. If it was during normal times, a second-grade fairy expansion pill would surely fetch a high price. But it's a pity that my store is about to close, and if I can't sell it in a short time, I might end up losing it. Old mister, you should look for another store." It could be seen that he was slightly disappointed. The fairy expansion pill was an elixir that could help one advance to the fairy realm, so the higher the grade, the better it would be. As such, second-grade elixirs were quite rare in the market, and they were quite profitable. However, it was a pity that his store's management wasn't good, so he couldn't stock up any more. "Then what about this one?" Suyu took out another jade bottle. The plump shopkeeper didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. "Old mister, it isn't a matter of how many elixirs there are, but I'm really—" Before he could finish his words, his pupils contracted, and his voice came to an abrupt end. His small eyes flickered as he stared at the jade bottle. A third-grade spirit elixir." When he just finished speaking, his plump body, which was as nimble as a monkey, jumped out of the counter and rushed toward the store's door, then closed it behind him. He then turned around and cupped his hands in surprise. "It's my poor eyesight, and I didn't manage to discern your esteemed status. Please forgive me. Old mister, please follow me to the back hall to have a chat." Suyu chuckled and followed him calmly. He wasn't afraid that the shopkeeper would try to murder him for his wealth. If he was smart, he would surely understand that this was an opportunity for him. In the back hall, the plump shopkeeper served Suyu a top-grade spirit tea and asked, "Old mister, may I know where you are working?" There were less than 30 primary alchemists in the whole Blue Mountain Range. The Yuan family had 10 of them, while the Elixir Production Alliance had 20 of them. Whenever a new primary alchemist appeared, both sides would fight over them, and they would even fight over them. Chapter 747. Suyu revealed a faint smile as he said, "Didn't I say that I'm not an alchemist? I'm just in charge of selling them. Shopkeeper, what do you think? Do you want to buy them? How many do you have?" The shopkeeper asked expectantly. Suyu pointed at the elixirs on the table and said, "I only have one bottle." The shopkeeper's disappointment was obvious, but after he thought about it carefully, he realized that the primary alchemist was probably just trying to make elixirs to sell because he hadn't found a faction to rely on. As such, it was impossible for him to have a large stock of them. However, if we cooperate well, I can sell them for a long time. I can supply them for at least half a month, Suyu said confidently. The shopkeeper's eyes lit up and delight appeared on his face. Fine, I will accept this deal. He then added, in the market, this elixir is sold for 40 crystals, and all great elixir stores don't buy it for more than 35 crystals. If you can promise to supply it for a long time for half a month, I will not only buy it for 40 crystals, but I will also give you a 20% discount on the materials you need. He then added, as for the future supply, a third-grade fairy expansion pill costs 36 crystals. This is a price that you can't get from any of the great elixir stores. Suyu praised him inwardly. He was really a good businessman. His first third-grade elixir didn't earn him a single cent, so he would surely use it to make a name for himself and attract people's attention. After all, third-grade fairy expansion pills were extremely rare in the market, and even if they appeared, they might not be available for purchase. Hence, only the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance's large stores sold them. Hence, if such a small and remote store sold them, the effects would surely be astonishing. If they managed to achieve the desired effect, the third-grade fairy expansion pills that Suyu would provide would be sold in a short time. Moreover, he would even be able to raise the price for those who urgently needed it. The benefits he would gain from this trip were 10 times greater than the price he had paid for it. Although he had lost 4 or 5 crystals this time and lost 20% of the materials he needed, he still had an opportunity to make a comeback. Since the elixir store was going to close down anyway, he might as well give it a try. Fine, I will sell this third-grade fairy expansion pill to you for 40 of them. However, I don't need crystals for them. Instead, I will exchange them for these materials. Suyu threw the list to him. There were many kinds of materials for the fairy expansion pill, as well as the pure yang vital return pill's ingredient. It was extremely difficult to analyze the fairy expansion pill's recipe. The chubby shopkeeper was not surprised. Actually, even if he analyzed the ingredients of the immortal expansion pill, it would be useless. Not only did a pill recipe record the ingredients, but it also recorded the order of refinement, the quantity taken, the processing technique, and so on. It was impossible to infer the pill recipe just by knowing the ingredient. If that was the case, pill recipes would have been worthless a long time ago. Alright, I'll get it done right away. Not long after, the shopkeeper handed him a bundle. There were 20 sets of materials for the Immortal Expansion Pill and 20 sets of materials for the Pure Yang True Return Pill. 40 crystal stones in exchange for a total of 40 sets of materials. The purchasing power of crystal stones was evident. Farewell. Shopkeeper, please wait for my news. I will definitely come back within 3 days, Suyu said, then turned around and left. Old mister, there is still this second-grade fairy expansion pill. The plump shopkeeper noticed that Suyu had left this bottle of pills behind. Suyu waved his hands without turning his head. Give it to the shopkeeper. It's just a second-grade spirit elixir. Nothing more? The chubby shopkeeper clicked his tongue. A second-grade spirit pill was a top-notch existence for the vast majority of martial artists. As expected of an alchemist, the chubby shopkeeper knew that this old man, who had an air of immortality, was surely a primary alchemist. After they returned to the Yuan family, Suyu and Yuan Yingying went into secluded cultivation, spending all day making elixirs. There were a total of 40 sets of pills, which would be enough for them to use for a long time. While they were making elixirs, Yuan Wanbi was also cultivating. Eldest Miss, this month-end exam's reward is quite generous. It's rumored that it's a 4th-grade elixir personally made by the family master, and it has a miraculous effect on the early stage of the fairy realm. So, this elixir will surely belong to you, Xiao Tao said. Yuan Wanbi, who was focusing on her cultivation, said calmly, What does the family's month-end exam count for? My stage is in the Blue Mountain Range, and if I can get the first place in the Blue Mountain Range Great Meet, I will get a place as an outer sanctum disciple of the soul-seizing palace. Once I join the soul-seizing palace, my status will rise, and my engagement with the Shangguan family will become more secure. Otherwise, the Shangguan family's opposition to this marriage won't be appeased so easily. The high and mighty Shangguan clan and the small Yuan clan were going to have a marriage alliance. The Shangguan clan would definitely have a lot of internal conflict. After all, she didn't want to end up like Yuan Yingying after marrying into the Shangguan family. As she thought of this, she asked, "What is Yuan Yingying doing? Also, what happened to that old man?" "Eldest miss, it seems like they're in a secret room, and they haven't come out for a long time. They're probably trying to make elixirs," Xiao Tao said. Yuan Wanbi sneered when she heard this. Making elixirs? She really doesn't want to give up. She persisted until now. She doesn't even have any alchemy techniques, yet she still wants to make elixirs? She's really stupid. She then added, "Continue observing her, and you must inform me if she makes any strange movements before I marry the Shangguan family." In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. During these 3 days, the two of them continued making elixirs crazily. Yuan Yingying was drenched in sweat, but she was still intoxicated by the process. She had never been so happy before, and she was delighted as she looked at the third-grade spirit elixirs forming in her hands. During these 3 days, Suyu also gained a lot. He had been a newbie who couldn't even control flames, but he could now control them and melt the elixir's materials. However, after he melted them, he kept failing to fuse them, as he lacked experience. He had wasted 10 fairy expansion elixir's materials. However, Suyu's interest in elixir making was peaked. During these 3 days, Yuan Yingying successfully made 10 third-grade fairy expansion elixirs and 20 pure yang vital return elixirs. The latter elixirs were for Suyu to heal his internal energy channel, while the former elixirs were for making elixirs. Yuan Yingying slumped against the wall. She was quite delighted, but she still wished to continue. Suyu swallowed a pure yang vital return elixir, which helped his internal energy channel recover by a great deal. Now, his internal energy channel had recovered by 30%, and if he continued consuming 2 elixirs a day, he would be able to fully recover his internal energy channel. "Okay, I will go and get some more materials. You don't need to make pure yang vital return elixirs anymore, but you can continue trying to make fairy expansion elixirs. Also, I need to look for some elixirs that can be used for your cultivation," Suyu said. After several hours had passed, Suyu, who was wearing a straw cape, walked slowly toward the store, which was surrounded by a sea of people. Even before he reached the store, he could feel that it was different from before. The last time he had come here, the store had been deserted, and there were many martial artists walking around the store. However, they didn't seem to be selling anything, as if they were waiting for something. There were also many martial artists in the vicinity, and they all seemed quite anxious. As for the plump shopkeeper, he didn't have time to deal with this matter, so he just stood at the store's entrance and waited anxiously. Even though he seemed calm, he was actually quite anxious. 3 days had passed, yet the old man still hadn't come. Seeing that the effect of his advertisement was about to disappear, how could he not be anxious? All of a sudden, an old man wearing a straw cape appeared before his eyes, causing his pupils to contract. Even though the old man was hiding himself, his intuition was still telling him that he was the old man. So, out of caution, he didn't expose the old man's identity, and he just walked back to the counter as if nothing had happened. After Suyu entered the store, he asked calmly, "Shopkeeper, do you have third-grade fairy expansion elixirs for sale? I want to reserve some of them, so can we find a quiet place to discuss this?" Reserve elixirs? The martial artists in the store became vigilant, and they all stared at the old man in the straw cape. "Haha, old mister, you came at just the right time. The third-grade fairy expansion elixirs will arrive tonight, so you can reserve them. Please, follow me." The plump shopkeeper finally relaxed. In the back hall, the plump shopkeeper was overjoyed. "Old mister, you are really a man of your word. You will surely arrive within 3 days. You have really saved me." When he had sold the third-grade elixirs, many ruthless people had come to look for him and forcefully reserve them. Some of them had even left behind a deposit. If he didn't receive the spirit elixirs when the time came, he would probably have to flee. In fact, he probably wouldn't even be able to flee, as the store was already being monitored. So, if he tried to flee, he would surely die even faster. 10 pills. Take them. Suyu threw 10 jade bottles at him. The jade bottles flew all over the table, and the plump shopkeeper's eyes were almost blinded by them. 10 pills? Good. Good. It's really good. The plump shopkeeper was overjoyed, and he couldn't help but laugh. I'm finally saved. Suyu looked at him angrily as he thought to himself, if I didn't waste 10 batches of materials, I would have gotten 23rd-grade fairy expansion elixirs. Old mister, do you want to exchange them for crystals or materials this time? The plump shopkeeper looked at Suyu nervously, as if he was looking at a child giving away his wealth. He had already given him 10 third-grade spirit elixirs, which meant that he had already fulfilled his promise. So, even if he didn't provide more in the future, the plump shopkeeper couldn't say anything about it. However, Suyu said calmly, let's follow the same rules as before, but this time, I'll give you a different list. This time, there were only fairy expansion elixirs and spirit elixirs that could help half-fairies increase their cultivation. The plump shopkeeper was overjoyed. According to my previous promise, I will pay 36 crystals for a third-grade fairy expansion elixir, so 10 of them will cost a total of 360 crystals. If I convert them into materials, I will immediately go and get them. The plump shopkeeper was so excited that he trembled with every step he took. After a long time, he finally came back with a spatial ring, which was covered in sweat. Old mister, they are all here. If you have more elixirs in the future, please take care of me. The plump shopkeeper's small store didn't have such a large stock of materials, and he had only managed to gather them by sweeping all of the nearby small and big medicinal stores. In the process, he wasn't cheated by his fellow medicinal stores. However, because he didn't want to treat Suyu shabbily, he clenched his teeth and endured it. Suyu could discern that it wasn't easy for him, so he revealed a faint smile and said, "You can set your mind at ease. As long as you can afford them, I will surely give them to you. Farewell." Suyu took inventory of the materials, then waved his sleeves and left. The plump shopkeeper followed him with his gaze until he reached the door. Then, a sinister smile appeared on his face. "Ha ha, little lambs, why don't you just come here to be slaughtered?" On this day, the Blue Mountain Range was in an uproar. In a small, remote store, 10 third-grade fairy expansion elixirs were sold in a single go. Every single one of them was sold for more than 45 crystals. Even though many people were cursing them, they were still sold out in just 2 hours. Chapter 748. After all, the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance's merchants had already run out of level 3 celestial expansion pills. For at least half a month, not a single pill was sold. According to those in the know, this pill was difficult to refine, and the cost of refining was high. It was not as profitable as refining other pills, so there were very few of them. Even if there were, they would have already been reserved by reputable figures in advance for their relatives or even subordinates to break through to the fairy realm. How could they possibly have a chance? This news caused an uproar among the 3 crystals half-fairy realm expert. A large number of 3 crystals half-fairy realm experts swarmed over and surrounded the small elixir store. "Shopkeeper, take out the third-grade expansion immortal pill. I want it." A vigorous youth rushed into the shop and slammed the counter without caring about anything else. His 3 crystals half-fairy realm cultivation emanated from his body as he shouted in a stern voice. Unexpectedly, the plump shopkeeper, who was sitting at the counter, crossed his legs. He was clearly just a one-crystal half-fairy realm cultivator, yet he wasn't afraid of the ferocious three-crystals half-fairy realm cultivator. He rubbed his nose with his pinky finger and cast a sidelong glance at the shopkeeper. "Are you talking to me?" The three crystals half-fairy realm expert, who had a fiery temper, was infuriated by the shopkeeper's words. "How dare you speak to me in such a manner? Believe it or not, I can kill you with one palm strike." However, the slightly plump shopkeeper shook his clothes and chuckled. "Kid, if you don't want to die too quickly, line up outside obediently. When it's your turn, this shopkeeper will inform you." The three crystals half-fairy realm youth was so infuriated that he started laughing. "A trifling shopkeeper dares to show such disrespect to me? I don't believe that you can do anything to me." However, before he could finish speaking, several murderous intents shot at him from behind. "Young man, wait outside. If you want to die, I can fulfill your wish now." The young man looked back and saw a man and a woman sitting quietly in the hall. Both of them had their eyes closed and were resting. Their cultivations weren't weak, as they were all three crystals half-fairies. "Humph! Who are you?" "I'm from the Three Flames gang." The young man wasn't afraid at all. He raised his head and said. Unexpectedly, one of the women said in a calm tone, "Oh? Was the Three Fire Gang that great? My city's West Poison Widow Seven Sisters would like to pay you a visit." The young man's body stiffened, and his pupils constricted. His face was full of shock. Poison Widow. His entire body was trembling, and his voice was filled with fear. The poisonous widow's reputation was simply too great. It was a group of 7 sisters, and every single one of them was a vicious and ruthless character. Aside from the youngest, the 7th sister, the rest were all fairies. They occupied the western region of the city, and no one dared to provoke them. This woman was actually the poisonous widow? His heart thumped wildly, and he wished he could slip away as soon as possible. "Then, what about you?" The young man looked at the man opposite the woman. He was very scholarly and had an otherworldly aura. The scholarly man glanced at him. "Me? He's just the big brother of the Axe Gang." The big brother of the Axe Gang? The young man was so scared that he almost fainted. The Axe Gang had a large number of members, and they were all vicious, fugitives who killed people like flies. There were so many of them that even the Poison Widow had to avoid them. At this moment, the young man wished that he had never come here. Even more so, he hated that he should not have been so blind as to cause trouble here. "Since you know, why haven't you scrammed yet?" the scholarly man said indifferently. The young man was so scared that he pissed his pants, and his face turned pale as he fled. He didn't have the same overbearing aura as before. The scholarly man looked at the half-fairies outside the door, who didn't dare to enter, and said calmly, "I won't stop you from buying elixirs, but if anyone dares to cause trouble before I get the elixirs, then don't blame the Axe Gang for not recognizing you." His unspoken implication was that anyone who tried to stop him from buying the elixirs would die. The 3 crystals half-fairies outside the door didn't dare to resist, and they rejoiced that they were there, as the shopkeeper's life would be saved, and they would be able to buy the elixirs smoothly. If they hadn't been there, that evil guy might have kidnapped the shopkeeper, and their chances of getting the elixirs would have been slim. "The Three Flames Gang is just a bunch of fools." The crowd mocked them while they waited patiently outside. This piece of news caused a great commotion, and it eventually spread to the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance. The Yuan family held a great meeting because of this matter. All of the family's primary alchemists were ordered to participate in this meeting. I believe that all of you have heard that a batch of 3rd-grade fairy expansion pills is circulating in the market. I want to know whether someone from our Yuan family is doing such a thing. The Yuan family's master's sharp gaze passed through the 10 primary alchemists present, while he spoke in a gentle tone. The 10 primary alchemists shook their heads in denial. "Family's master, you can rest assured. We won't do such a petty thing. one of the alchemists said. The rest of the alchemists also cleared their names. The Yuan family's master said, I believe all of you. It seems like the Elixir Production Alliance made a mistake, as only our two factions have the fairy expansion pills. However, one of the alchemists shook his head and said, Family's master, I think that there is something fishy about this matter. The Elixir Production Alliance's control over alchemists is greater than our Yuan family's, so the possibility of their alchemists secretly refining elixirs and selling them is quite low. Moreover, according to the circulating news, they refined 11 third-grade fairy expansion pills in just 6 days, which means that they probably spent 6 whole days refining elixirs. So, how could they possibly hide it from the Elixir Production Alliance? Upon hearing this, everyone sank into contemplation. If it wasn't the Yuan family or the Elixir Production Alliance, then who could it be? Could it be a new primary alchemist? Yuan Wanbi was quite intelligent, and she immediately voiced her suspicions. The fairy expansion pills are indeed the secret elixir recipes controlled by our two factions, but there are always exceptions. After all, the fairy expansion pills were introduced by us from the outside world, and we didn't create them. So, we can't be sure that someone else didn't possess them. A new primary alchemist? Everyone's hearts shook upon hearing this. It was extremely difficult to nurture an alchemist, and it took a long time for one to appear every 10 years. So, once an alchemist appeared, the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance would fight over him. If this was really the case, then the Yuan family would have to be careful. Regardless of whether Wanbi's guess is correct or not, we must still take action. The Yuan family's master muttered to himself for a moment before he decisively ordered, immediately dispatch the family's fairy realm experts and hide in the vicinity of that shop. We must find that alchemist. Upon hearing this, all of the Yuan family's members braced themselves, as they knew that their fight with the Elixir Production Alliance would start once again. Yuan Yingying, who was standing beside Su Yu, couldn't help but feel excited. Her face was flushed with delight. That alchemist was her. There were several times when she almost couldn't help but admit that it was her, but she was stopped by Su Yu in time. We can't do it now, as the time isn't right yet. Let's wait for a suitable opportunity, Su Yu said. Yuan Yingying restrained her excitement and nodded silently. She then returned to Su Yu's side, while tears welled up in her eyes. If it were any other time, no one would pay any attention to Yuan Yingying. However, ever since the arrival of the Almighty Divine Master, Yuan Yingying had become the focus of the family's attention. The Yuan family's master also noticed Yuan Yingying's unusual expression, so he asked, Yingying, what happened to you? The other people were also bewildered, as they couldn't help but wonder why Yuan Yingying was so emotional and tearing up for no reason at all. Yuan Yingying was startled by this, and she started stammering incoherently for a long time. Yuan Wanbi then asked calmly, Sister, are you thinking of yourself as that primary alchemist? Although she spoke calmly, it wasn't difficult to discern the mockery in her words. How could a wild girl, who had just entered the Yuan family for 2 years, be a powerful primary alchemist? This wasn't funny at all. Many of the family's uncles and elders looked at Yuan Yingying apathetically and shook their heads slightly. It seemed like they didn't like her at all. The Yuan family's master felt somewhat helpless, as he felt sorry for his sister, who was being ostracized once again, so he deliberately raised his voice and asked, Yingying, did that senior come to look for you again? Yuan Yingying followed Su Yu's instructions and shook her head as she replied, He didn't. Upon hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Yuan Wanbi furrowed her brows slightly, while doubt welled up in her heart. She then asked, Sister, that senior divine master shouldn't have just been talking about it, right? Otherwise, why hasn't he shown himself since the end of the month's exam is approaching? Yuan Yingying didn't reply to this question. Many people's hearts sank upon hearing this, as if this was really the case. The Yuan family's happiness would have been for nothing. Okay, let's end this meeting here. After we go down, we must track down that primary alchemist closely. The Yuan family's master waved his hand helplessly. A similar scene was playing out in the Elixir Production Alliance. 20 primary alchemists were ordered to come here and investigate them one by one. Brother Zhao, it seems like he isn't a primary alchemist from our Elixir Production Alliance. Could it be the Yuan family? A red-nosed middle-aged man asked the blue-clothed scholar sitting opposite him. The blue-clothed scholar was Zhao Yin's father, one of the Elixir Production Alliance's 2 big shots, and they had joined hands to suppress the Yuan family. It's impossible. The blue-clothed scholar shook his head. The Yuan family is very strict with its elixir recipes, and the spy I planted in the Yuan family hasn't succeeded even after 10 years. As such, there aren't many primary alchemists who can touch the recipe of the immortal expansion pill. A spy? The red-nosed middle-aged man was quite curious as to who this spy was. He only knew that this spy was hiding by the side of an important person in the Yuan family. Does this mean that it's a new primary alchemist? The red-nosed middle-aged man's eyes lit up. The blue-clothed scholar nodded, and just as he was about to speak, a rough voice echoed from outside the hall. It's really a new primary alchemist, and he isn't an ordinary primary alchemist. As the voice echoed, an old man draped in a black robe stepped into the hall. He had an old face, white hair, and a pair of yellow eyes, which made people shudder when they looked at him. The expressions of the blue-clothed scholar and the red-nosed middle-aged man changed drastically, and they hurriedly stood up and said in delight, "Welcome, Elder Liao." They were the 2 big shots of the Blue Mountain Ranges Elixir Production Alliance, yet they were still so respectful to the person in front of them. This was because Elder Liao was the Soul Seizing Palace's outer sanctum's elder. The Blue Mountain Range wasn't far from the Soul Seizing Palace, and every year, the Soul Seizing Palace would select an outer sanctum's disciple from the Blue Mountain Range. For the Blue Mountain Range's cultivators, being able to enter one of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands factions was an unattainable dream, and ordinary people would find it laughable. Only the geniuses nurtured by various factions would have the opportunity to enter one of the factions through the competition. As for the referee, it was none other than Elder Liao. He had a deep relationship with the Elixir Production Alliance, so no matter how one looked at him, the blue-clothed scholar and the red-nosed middle-aged man had to be respectful to him. Elder Liao stepped into the hall and sat in the main seat, while the blue-clothed scholar and the red-nosed middle-aged man sat on either side of him. Chapter 749. After he spoke, he threw the elixirs at them. They were both intermediate alchemists who could refine 4th-grade elixirs, so they were quite skilled in the field of elixirs. They observed the elixirs together, then took some powder and sniffed it before rubbing it between their fingers. After they tested it, they were both startled. What a pure elixir! Its purity is higher than a 3rd-grade fairy expansion pills by more than half. Elder Liao asked, "Did you notice it?" Such a pure elixir came from the purified ingredient. In other words, this person was able to purify ingredients to an extremely high level. Do you think you can achieve such a feat? The blue-robed scholar pondered this for a moment, then said, "I can also achieve such a feat, but it's impossible for me to purify 11 elixirs in just 6 days. Purifying ingredients is a time-consuming and exhausting process, and unless he is an alchemist who can refine 5th-grade spirit elixirs, it's impossible for him to achieve such a feat in such a short time." The red-nosed middle-aged man nodded with a grave look on his face. "You are right. This person is probably a powerful intermediate alchemist who can refine 5th-grade spirit elixirs, and he is quite experienced. It seems like an extraordinary person has come to the Blue Mountain Range," Elder Liao said with a faint smile. The blue-robed scholar's eyes flickered as he asked, "Elder Liao, what do you mean?" Elder Liao chuckled and said, "Since he has appeared in our soul-seizing palace, he must serve us. If he is unwilling, we won't leave him to our enemies. In other words, if they couldn't rope him in, they would just kill him." You don't need to worry about what happens next, as I will investigate it myself." After Elder Liao spoke, he strode away. For the next 5 days, Su Yu continued to refine elixirs in his private room. He had finally learned how to fuse elixirs, and although it wasn't as smooth as Yuan Yingying's, he was still able to refine a complete elixir. The elixirs he refined were the lowest grade first-grade fairy expansion pills. According to the grading system, Su Yu could barely be considered an alchemist, as he was the lowest grade entry-level alchemist. If he could successfully refine third-grade fairy expansion pills, he would be considered an early-stage alchemist. Now, he just needed to cultivate frequently to become more proficient in alchemy technique. Only when he reached that level would he be able to use the extreme limit elixir manufacturing techniques elixir fusion limit to pursue higher grade. Meanwhile, Su Yu continued to consume pure yang vital return pills for the next 5 days, and his internal blood energy channels had recovered by 60%. Half of his zhenqi could circulate freely, and it would not affect his cultivation anymore. The only thing he had to wait for was for his vital energy channels to fully recover. When that time came, he would be able to break through the bottleneck and enter the fairy realm. Because of this, Su Yu had no choice but to prepare a higher-grade fairy expansion pill just in case. He had made great progress, but Yuan Yingying had also made great progress. She had consumed a large number of third-grade spirit pills to increase her cultivation, and 2 days ago, she had successfully advanced to the 2 crystals half-fairy realm. However, she wasn't interested in cultivation at all. She was completely engrossed in alchemy, and she was vaguely improving. Her intuition told her that, even if Su Yu didn't help her purify the ingredients, she would still be able to refine third-grade spirit elixirs and become a primary alchemist by herself. Su Yu could not help but sigh. This little girl was really good material for making elixirs. Yingying, focus on cultivating. I'll make a trip to the market and be back soon. He had used up all the materials and needed to get some more. However, it was time for Su Yu to leave the Yuan family and go back to look for the Zhenlong world's residents. Even though they had a divine master like the King of Darkness guarding them, Jiuzhou's experts were as numerous as the clouds in the sky. So, who knew whether they would run into any danger? Hence, Su Yu decided to sell the elixirs he had obtained during this period of time and exchange them for a large number of crystals. Then, he would buy 2 or 3 batches of fairy expansion pills ingredient. He was going to try to refine 4th-grade fairy expansion pills in preparation for his breakthrough. Su Yu went to the plump shopkeeper's shop once again, and as he observed the surroundings, he couldn't help but click his tongue. He could sense that there were at least 103 crystals half-fairies lingering in the vicinity, and there were even fairy realm experts waiting nearby. As for the 2 crystals half-fairies and 1 crystals half-fairies, there were at least 10,000 of them. After all, the Blue Mountain Range's population was like the Zhenlong world's, so there were at least 100,000 half-fairies here. This time, Su Yu still disguised himself as a straw raincoat and entered the shop. "Shopkeeper, can I order elixirs?" Su Yu went straight to the front of the shop. Compared to the dejected shopkeeper of the past, the current shopkeeper was full of mettle and even seemed slightly arrogant. In the past, he was just an insignificant shopkeeper that no one paid any attention to. Now, he was someone who was protected by the Blue Mountain Range's 4 great underground factions. Anyone who was in such a position would have a different attitude. However, when he saw Su Yu's arrival, his gaze immediately changed. The reason why he could be so arrogant was because of Su Yu's elixirs. Now that he left Su Yu, he was nothing. "Dear customer, are you here to order elixirs? Please follow me." The shopkeeper's expression didn't change as he led him to the back hall. The poisonous widow and the axe gang's master, who were in the room, calmly glanced at Su Yu. Anyone who came to order elixirs had to go to the back hall to discuss it. Slap. In the back hall, Su Yu threw a spatial ring at the shopkeeper. "They are all here." The plump shopkeeper's hands shivered as he swallowed his saliva. "Old mister, how many did you bring this time?" Suyu replied, "I didn't count them." "You can count them yourself." They had only cared about making elixirs, so they hadn't counted them. The plump shopkeeper was looking forward to it. If he could get 20 of them, it would be a pleasant surprise, as he would surely earn a large sum of money and gain more publicity. However, when he probed it with his soul, the plump shopkeeper's body stiffened, and he wore a complicated expression. He was first taken aback, then overjoyed, then bitter. In the end, he put on a crying face and said, "Old mister, do you want me to laugh or cry? There are 200 of them. Even if you sold me, you wouldn't be able to gather such a sum." Suyu chuckled as he looked at his comical expression. "I can wait. Just sell them on the spot and give me the crystals on the spot." The plump shopkeeper was overjoyed when he heard this. He bowed repeatedly and said, "Oh my! You are even closer to me than my father. Old ancestor, I thank you for your great kindness." Given the elixir's reputation, it didn't matter who he sold them to. Why would he sell them to someone who didn't have enough money to buy them? Suyu had first given him the goods, then took his money. It could be said that he was taking care of him. After all, if he could get 9 crystals from each of the 200 elixirs, then he would get a profit of nearly 2,000 crystals. Even the 4 great gangs' annual income couldn't reach such a sum. This was an inexhaustible amount of wealth. Suyu looked at the plump shopkeeper and said in a deep voice, "However, I think that you should understand that you should stop after this transaction. There isn't a place for you in the Blue Mountain Range." Even though he possessed such a great amount of wealth, he was still like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered with his current power. In just a few days, he would surely die. Moreover, he had been in the limelight recently, and if he offended a half-fairy, he would surely suffer a great calamity. "Hee, old mister, many thanks for your concern, but I have already arranged a way out. After I finish this transaction, I will flee to the White Cloud Lake, hide there, and cultivate in peace." The plump shopkeeper revealed a mysterious smile. Suyu nodded. "Okay, it's good that you are aware of it. I don't want to see my former partner die on the streets overnight. Finally, prepare 3 portions of fairy expansion pills for me," Suyu said. The plump, middle-aged man suddenly felt lonely, and all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. He took some materials from his spatial ring, which he had prepared in advance, and presented them to Suyu with both hands. "Old mister, I am indebted to you for your care, and my life has changed. If I get a chance, I will surely repay you for your kindness." Suyu chuckled. "I will accept your kindness. You should quickly think of a way to dispose of the elixirs and leave this place." The plump shopkeeper nodded, then left with the elixirs. He came back in less than 4 hours. Suyu raised his brows. "Well, why did you come so quickly?" After all, 200 elixirs couldn't be sold in such a short time. The plump shopkeeper chuckled. "How could I handle such a troublesome business myself? I sold all of the elixirs to the Poisonous Widow and the Axe Gang at a price of 43 crystals each. Although I lost 300 or 400 crystals from them, it was still worth it to escape. Old mister, let's run away together. I think that the Poisonous Widow and the Axe Gang have already prepared assassins to chase us to the back of the hall. Let's leave quickly." Suyu praised him inwardly. He was really a smart person. Of course, the Black Widow and the Axe Gang weren't easy to deal with. So, if the shopkeeper wanted to get so many crystals from them, he probably wouldn't be able to leave the Blue Mountain Range alive. As he spoke, the plump shopkeeper lifted the lid of the stall and revealed a cave. The marks of the excavation were clear, and it seemed like it had just been created not long ago. 3 days ago, I paid someone to dig this tunnel, which leads directly to the outside of the city. Once we leave the city, it will be extremely difficult for them to find us. The shopkeeper had already anticipated this day, so he had prepared an escape route in advance. After he spoke, he took the lead and jumped into it. Suyu furrowed his brows. He could sense that there were indeed several 3 crystals half-fairy realm experts rushing toward the back of the hall. Although he wasn't afraid of them, he didn't want to cause any trouble for them. So, he jumped into the cave and destroyed the entrance. After half a day, they had successfully passed through the underground tunnel and reached the outskirts of the city. This place was spacious and empty, so even if the poisonous widow and the axe gang chased after them, it would be difficult for them to find their whereabouts. "Old mister, these are your crystals." They were sold for a total of 8,600 crystals, and 7,200 of them belonged to you. Please take a look at them. The plump shopkeeper distributed the crystals and handed them over to him gratefully. "Old mister, you have given me a new lease on life, and I will never forget your kindness." The plump shopkeeper was extremely grateful to him. He was originally an ordinary shopkeeper who was on the verge of bankruptcy, but who would have expected that Suyu would help him turn his situation around and turn him into a wealthy family. The remaining 1,400 crystals would be enough for him to use for the rest of his life. Even if he wanted to do business, he would still be able to open a large shop. Moreover, with his intelligence, he might even be able to do great things in the future. Suyu didn't count them, but took out 1,000 crystals. "I don't take advantage of people. Take it. Consider it a repayment for forcing you to leave your hometown, as well as a small subsidy for your business." "This is—" The plump shopkeeper was startled, as this was 1,000 crystals. Even most fairies wouldn't have such a great amount of wealth. Suyu threw it into a small spatial ring, then threw it into the shopkeeper's bosom. He then said calmly, "Take care of yourself." The plump shopkeeper looked at Suyu's back in a daze. He felt an indescribable sourness in his heart, as he was used to the fickleness of human nature and the vicissitudes of life. Plop! The plump shopkeeper kowtowed to Suyu's back as tears welled up in his eyes. "I, who shall I, swear that I will one day repay your great kindness." Chapter 750. After Suyu returned to the city, he headed toward the Yuan family's residence. However, after he had just taken a few steps into the city, he stopped and turned around, then went back to the outskirts and entered the wilderness. "There is no one here, so you can come out now," Suyu said calmly as he looked at a place in front of him. After a moment of silence, it seemed as if no one had responded, but Suyu continued to stare at that spot. Hee, what a powerful perception! How surprising! All of a sudden, a mass of black demonic energy shot out of the ground and condensed into a human figure. As the black demonic energy converged, an old man wearing a black robe appeared. His eyes were dim and emitted a cold glint. "A demonic cultivator?" Suyu furrowed his brows slightly. "I'm an outer sanctum elder of the soul-seizing palace. My surname is Liao. May I know your name?" Elder Liao asked. Suyu replied calmly, "You don't need to know my name, and I don't need to know how you managed to track me. I just want to know why you tracked me here." Elder Liao didn't get angry. Instead, he chuckled and said, "I like your straightforward character. Since that's the case, I won't hide anything from you. You are an intermediate alchemist, so why don't you follow me and join the soul-seizing palace? Only there will you be able to display your talents and obtain more benefits," Elder Liao said. In fact, Suyu could join some faction to further his cultivation. Jojo had many experts, and with Suyu's cultivation, even if he returned to the Zhenlong clan's territory, he wouldn't be able to protect them. If a faction was willing to accommodate him and let him cultivate, Suyu wouldn't reject it. As the soul-seizing palace was one of the 18 factions in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, as well as one of the most powerful demonic factions, Suyu should join it. However, it was a pity that he had too many grudges against the soul-seizing palace. In the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, countless geniuses from the soul-seizing palace had died at his hands. Even Cho Ziming, who was favored the most, had died at his hands. If he went to the soul-seizing palace now, Wouldn't he be sending himself into a tiger's den? What if I refuse? Su Yu asked. Elder Liao still wore a faint smile, but his gaze was ice-cold. Then, I can only apologize and send you on your way. Rather than letting another faction get you, it would be better for me to bury you here. Upon hearing this, Su Yu laughed. Your soul-seizing palace is still as overbearing as before. Elder Liao furrowed his brows. Oh? From your tone, it seems like the soul-seizing palace has offended you before? Su Yu shrugged his shoulders and said, It can't be considered as an offense. After all the people who were offended have been killed. Can you tell me who you are? Elder Liao narrowed his eyes. Su Yu revealed a playful expression. I think you should ask about the geniuses of the soul-seizing palace who died in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, such as Chou Ziming. If he had not mentioned Chou Ziming, it would have been fine. However, there were more than 30 soul-seizing palace's disciples who had died in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. However, Chou Ziming had been killed by someone, and that person had even auctioned off his high-grade divine artifact dagger in front of everyone. It was also this person who had almost killed Gu Taishu's clone, a 9th-grade fairy. The clone of the Red Blood Palace's elder Zi Qianqiu, who was at the level 6 fairy realm, was directly wiped out. Moreover, that person had a name. It was a name that was quite famous in the soul-seizing palace's outer sanctum, Su Yu. You are Su Yu. Elder Liao's pupils contracted, and fear welled up in his heart. If it was really that Su Yu, who only possessed a 7th-grade fairy's fighting prowess, then it was unknown whether he would be a match for him. Su Yu revealed a playful smile as he said, Congratulations. You got it right. Run. Elder Liao was shocked, and he immediately turned around to flee. His face turned green, as he had just come here to recruit an alchemist. How could he have expected that he would end up running into such a monster? You came just in time. I don't have the energy to deal with some matters, so you can take care of them for me. Su Yu revealed a smile as he raised his hand and made a grabbing motion. Black clouds immediately started surging in the night sky, while a giant eye appeared in the sky. A boundless heavenly might surged out of it, and it seemed like the eye of heaven. Elder Liao's whole body shuddered when he was stared at by the eye. He felt like a toad that was being stared at by a snake, and he instinctively stopped moving. As he raised his head and looked at the sky, he was overwhelmed with shock. Heaven's eye. His intuition was telling him that the eye could kill him with a single thought. Do you want to become my slave, or do you want to die now? Su Yu walked over to him and spoke calmly. You have 3 breaths' time to think about it. Slave? Elder Liao didn't even give it a second thought. Since he was a demonic cultivator, it seemed like he didn't care about anything other than his own life. The cruel demonic path's environment made him realize just how precious life was. Fine. Relax your mind and resist it, Su Yu said. Bitterness welled up in Elder Liao's heart, but he didn't dare to disobey him. Su Yu took a deep breath, then used the Heaven's Sun Gazing at Air Technique's Soul Control Realm technique. Heaven's Sun Gazing at Air. Su Yu shouted in a low voice, while 2 mysterious soul lights shot out of his eyes and entered his opponent's soul. In the Soul Control Realm, Su Yu could use his soul to control experts who were a whole realm higher than him. He could kill them with a single thought, as well as control their consciousness. If Su Yu didn't order him to do so, he wouldn't even know that he was being controlled. In the Zhenlong continent, when Su Yu was fighting many Saint Masters at the bottom of the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds, he had caused the 6th Saint Master, who was under his control, to suddenly launch an attack and injure the 5th Saint Master. At that time, the 6th Saint Master didn't even know that he was being controlled. Unless Elder Liao managed to advance to the Divine Master realm, he wouldn't be able to break free from Su Yu's control. If you are obedient, I can let you keep your consciousness, and I might even give you back your freedom. But, if you don't know what's good for you, then I can erase your consciousness and turn you into my puppet. So, if you harbor any disloyal thoughts, you should consider them carefully, Su Yu said. Elder Liao felt a bitter taste in his mouth as he wondered, why did I have to run into such a freak? Well, your old servant will follow your instructions, Elder Liao said. Su Yu nodded. He wasn't afraid that Elder Liao would find a way to break free from his control. After all, if it was that easy, then Su Yu would have to re-evaluate the Heaven's Sun gazing at air technique's value. You can just call me young master. Also, how many of these ingredients can you gather? Su Yu asked as he handed over the heart-refining mortal dust liquid's recipe. Elder Liao took it and swept his gaze over it, then raised his brows slightly. A middle-grade recipe? No, judging from its refining conditions, it doesn't seem like a modern recipe. Could it be an ancient recipe? He could discern the origin of the recipe with just a single glance. Su Yu was slightly surprised by this, and he wondered, is Elder Liao an alchemist? After Elder Liao recovered from his shock, he furrowed his brows and said, Young master, the other ingredients are still acceptable, as they are quite popular even in the modern world of elixirs. But there is one ingredient that has already gone extinct in Jiuzhou, such as the heartbroken zither grass. It contains a deadly poison, and it can harm people's souls immeasurably. It's rumored that the ancient alchemists used it as a component of poisonous pills, but even in the current era, it still doesn't have any use. Moreover, Jiuzhou's environment is different from the ancient era to the current era, so this ingredient has already gone extinct. It's impossible to find it again. Extinct? Su Yu furrowed his brows, as this was an excellent elixir for refining one's soul power. Is there not even a single one of them? Su Yu asked. Elder Liao shook his head. There isn't. At least, in the past 10,000 years, no one has ever heard of such an item appearing. Moreover, even if it did appear, it would be abandoned, and no one would use it. So, it's quite difficult to find it. The only things that can be found are its seeds. Seeds? Su Yu's heart shuddered. Do you know where I can find seeds? Elder Liao was startled by this, and he wondered, what can seeds do? However, he still spoke quickly. The soul-seizing palace has some of them, but young master, the current era's vital energy isn't the same as the ancient era's, so it's unlikely for those seeds to survive. Young master, why don't you reconsider? Delight flickered in Su Yu's eyes as he replied, I don't need them. I just want the seeds. Moreover, as for the other ingredients, please try your best to find them for me. Elder Liao opened his mouth, as seeds were easier to find than other ingredients. This was because most medicinal ingredients only had a short period of time to mature, and if they weren't plucked in time, they would wither. However, this wasn't the case for seeds. I understand. Young master, should I go there now? Elder Liao asked for Su Yu's permission. Su Yu shook his head. There is no need. Before I leave the Blue Mountain Range, I will be in the city, and I will come whenever you call me. Su Yu couldn't fight for long before his internal blood energy channels recovered, so he needed help. Elder Liao's cultivation was at the level 7 fairy realm, and he could be considered one of the strongest people in the Blue Mountain Range. Understood. The two of them quickly left, pretending that they didn't know each other. A short while after they left, a handsome young man, who was clad in a white, luxurious robe, descended gracefully. He had a jade-like face, and he was extremely handsome. His eyes were like limpid autumn waters, and they could charm countless young girls. His tall figure and outstanding temperament made the noble young master look even more heroic. Heavenly might? The young man looked at the remnant heavenly might in the sky, and shock appeared on his face. Could such a small city like the Blue Mountain Range contain such a great evil power? Heavenly might usually appeared in places where evil people wreaked havoc, so it was quite unusual for it to appear in such a place. Young master, are we going directly to the Yuan family to give them the betrothal gifts? After the young man landed, 100 robust men followed him, each carrying a fiery red, precious betrothal gift. The young man shook his head calmly. Of course not. Although I followed my father's wishes and agreed to this arranged marriage, it doesn't mean that I will accept her. You should look for a place to settle down, while I make some inquiries in the city. I want to see what my fiancé's character is like. After he spoke, the young man turned into a blur and disappeared into the city. Suyu, who was in the middle of flying, subconsciously looked at the outskirts of the city. His intuition told him that he had sensed a powerful aura. Suyu's heart shuddered. The Blue Mountain Range really had many hidden experts. He felt like he should keep a low profile. After he returned to the Yuan family's residence, Suyu immediately went to the second Mrs. Private room. Uncle Su, why did you leave for so long? Yingying was so worried about you. Yuan Yingying hugged Suyu's arm. Suyu smiled. After thinking for a moment, he took out a space ring and took out 3,000 crystals. This is your share. If you don't have enough materials to practice alchemy in the future, you won't have to worry about running out of money. Suyu casually passed the ring to her. Yuan Yingying was taken aback, and when she sent her soul into the ring, her eyes widened. Wow! So much! You are even richer than me. Chapter 751. I got it, Uncle Su. Yuan Yingying chuckled and planted a kiss on Suyu's cheek. Uncle Su, you're really good to me, and I really want to be with you forever. Suyu stroked his cheek. He was the same age as Yuan Yingying, yet this lass really treated him like an amiable elder. Well, Grandpa, are you still shy? Yuan Yingying widened her eyes and said earnestly, if you were 80 years younger, I would be willing to marry you. Even if I had to run away from my marriage, I would still want to be with you. Suyu didn't know whether he should laugh or cry, as he was really just 20 years old. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's start refining the elixir. This time, I will only refine it 3 times. Suyu took out 3 portions of the fairy expansion pill's ingredient. However, I won't refine a 3rd-grade spirit pill, but a 4th-grade one. 1 portion will be used as a backup, while the other 2 portions will be refined by both of us. A 4th-grade spirit pill? Yuan Yingying shook her head. It's impossible, as my current extreme limit elixir manufacturing technique is far from enough. Suyu revealed a faint smile and said, if I help you, then it might still be possible. In any case, just take out 1 portion and give it a try. As Suyu urged her, Yuan Yingying took the materials from Suyu skeptically. When she had just touched them, she exclaimed in shock, Ah! What a pure material! I can't even detect a single impurity in it. She finally realized that it was Suyu who had done it. Uncle Su, how did you manage to achieve it? It's really amazing. How did you manage to purify the materials so easily? I have never seen such a pure material. Even my father couldn't purify it to such a degree. Yuan Yingying's eyes became as wide as pearls. Suyu chuckled and said, let's quickly refine the elixir. The longer it is left in the air, the lower its purity will be. Yuan Yingying was filled with questions. She was really curious about what kind of elixir he could refine with such a pure material. Her face was filled with excitement as she started refining it. Refining the fairy expansion pill was already a piece of cake for her and Suyu, so they quickly started refining it. After 2 hours, Yuan Yingying's face was filled with sweat. She clenched her teeth and said, the purer the material is, the more difficult it will be to fuse it. It's twice as difficult to refine as a 3rd-grade spirit pill. When she was concocting a 3rd-grade fairy expansion pill, she could easily fuse the pill, but now, she couldn't do it smoothly for a long time. Time passed slowly, and after a full hour, the pill fusion was still progressing slowly. 2 hours later, a buzzing sound could be heard from the cauldron. The medicinal pills had been successfully combined. Yuan Yingying slumped weakly to the ground, her whole body drenched in sweat. She looked as if she was on the verge of collapse. Sure enough, I'm still pushing myself to concoct a grade 4 spirit pill. I barely succeeded. I wonder how the medicinal pill will turn out. Su Yu opened the elixir furnace. However, at that moment, a shock wave of an explosion came from within the elixir furnace. Not good. Su Yu had an ominous feeling as he protected Yuan Yingying. Amidst the pill qi that filled the air, one could vaguely see a dark purple pill with 4 bamboo leaves surrounding it. Accompanied by an explosion, it broke through the roof and shot outside in one breath. Fortunately, the commotion here wasn't too big, so it didn't attract too much attention. After Su Yu ascertained that Yuan Yingying was safe and sound, he rushed to the roof to clean up the broken pieces, then cleaned up the mess on the ground. Only then did he return to the pill refinement room and pretend that nothing had happened. "Uncle Su, father didn't discover us, did he?" Yuan Yingying stuck out her tongue in alarm. "I didn't expect that a grade 4 spirit pill's pressure would be so great. My cauldron's grade isn't high enough, so it exploded." Su Yu was speechless. "But I saw it clearly, and the pill was successfully concocted. Let's switch to a high-grade cauldron and start concocting the fairy expansion pills for us." Yuan Yingying's big eyes flickered with excitement as she nodded. The Yuan family's master was in his study, calmly reading alchemy book. All of a sudden, his expression changed, and he looked in the direction of Yuan Yingying's courtyard in surprise. He saw a round pearl flying in his direction. Feeling baffled, the Yuan clan's clan head subconsciously reached out and grabbed the bead in his hand. A pill? When the Yuan family's master opened his palm, a dense and bewitching smell of a pill assaulted his nostrils. When he got a clear look at the pill, he was startled. A grade 4 fairy expansion pill. It was dark purple in color and it had 4 bamboo leaves. If it wasn't a grade 4 spirit pill, what could it be? The Yuan family's master was overwhelmed with shock, as there were only 3 people in the whole Blue Mountain range who could concoct grade 4 spirit pills. If this pill wasn't concocted by him, then could it have been concocted by the Elixir Production Alliance? Wait. The Yuan family's master realized that something was amiss, so he asked with a grave expression, "Is it another fairy expansion pill?" Now, a large number of grade 3 fairy expansion pills had caused a huge commotion in the Blue Mountain range. It was rumored that the Poisonous Widow and the Axe Gang were fighting each other over the pills. Soon after, they were chased by other factions, and half of the Poisonous Widow's 6 fairy realm experts were killed in just half a day's time, while the Axe Gang suffered great losses. As for the person who concocted the pills, he had yet to reveal himself. Moreover, the only person who knew about this matter was the elixir store's shopkeeper, Hu Shaodai. What the Yuan family's master didn't expect was that a grade 4 fairy expansion pill would fly right in front of him. His intuition was telling him that the person who concocted the pill was in the Yuan family. The Yuan family's master's expression became gloomy as he thought to himself, "Great! You borrowed my Yuan family's financial resources and secretly practiced alchemy technique. You finally managed to become an intermediate alchemist. Can you now make grade 4 spirit pills?" The Yuan family's master was obviously referring to the family's 10 primary alchemists. Only 3 of them were members of the Yuan family, while the other 7 were hired with a large sum of money. If it was a member of the Yuan family who managed to make a breakthrough, the Yuan family's master would surely be overjoyed. However, why would the Yuan family's primary alchemists need to practice in secret? If his guess wasn't wrong, they should be 7 primary alchemists hired from outside, who had borrowed the Yuan family's resources to become intermediate alchemists. Although the Yuan family's master was angry, he didn't dare to reprimand them. He didn't even dare to question them. Now that they had become intermediate alchemists, they could already stand on equal footing with him. If he said something inappropriate and scared them away, then they would join the Elixir Production Alliance, which would make the Yuan family's future even more miserable. The Yuan family's master could only take advantage of this opportunity to persuade them to stay. Su Yu and Yuan Yingying were completely unaware of such a scene, as they continued making the grade 4 fairy expansion pills. After a whole day of hard work, they finally managed to get 2 Grade 4 Fairy expansion pills. As long as their internal blood energy channels recovered, they would be able to start advancing into the fairy realm. Ying, there are only 4 days left before the Yuan family's competition, and it's time for you to show off your abilities. So, don't make elixirs in the next few days and just cultivate properly. As Su Yu spoke, he took out a cloud-galloping horse from the 9 jade spiritual pearl. You should properly refine this object in the next 4 days, as it will be quite beneficial to you. Yuan Ying, who came from an alchemist family, was quite knowledgeable, and she was startled by just a single look at it. It was rumored that the cloud-galloping horse grew in regions with dense spiritual energy, and it was extremely difficult to find one. As such, it was extremely useful for helping a 3 crystals half-fairy to advance to the fairy realm. If a 3 crystals half-fairy consumed it, there was an 80% chance that he would advance to the fairy realm. Moreover, a 2 crystals half-fairy can also advance into the 3 crystals half-fairy realm. She was so delighted that she couldn't conceal her smile. This is my first time seeing a living cloud-galloping horse. You should start consuming it, Su Yu said. He also took out a pure yang vital return pill to treat her internal blood energy channels. Time elapsed in the blink of an eye. After 4 days, Yuan Ying managed to advance into the 3 crystals half-fairy realm, and she even reached the peak of the 3 crystals half-fairy realm. It was also on this day that the Yuan family's exam began. This exam was held once every quarter, and it was meant to test the family's younger generation's power. In the past, only a few core family elders had come to observe it, but this time, it was held in a grand manner. Not only were the family's core elders invited, but several primary alchemists were also invited. Moreover, even the branch's manager was invited. The number of participants was 3 times higher than usual, and it was extremely lively. What's going on this quarter? Why is it so intense? The branch's manager couldn't understand the family master's intentions. Normally, they didn't need to come to such a quarter's exam, as they could just let the branch's children participate in it. However, the family master had ordered them to attend this quarter's exam. It's really strange. Look, even Elder Pajuan has come. I remember that he was sent to keep an eye on that elixir store. Why was he called back? Everyone was bewildered, and even Yuan Wanbi, who prided herself on her intelligence, couldn't understand her father's intentions. After a short while, the Yuan family's master arrived. Everyone, please calm down. This year's exam is about to begin, so I have to say a few words first. The Yuan family's master wore a radiant smile as he said, My Yuan family has many geniuses among its younger generation, and I'm quite pleased with them. Thus, I prepared a pleasant surprise as a reward for this year's exam. The crowd was startled. A pleasant surprise? In the past, the first place would only get 20 crystals and a 3rd-grade spirit pill. So, what would be the reward for this year's exam? The reward for this year's exam is a 4th-grade fairy expansion pill. The Yuan family's master shouted loudly. He then took out a jade bottle, which contained a dark purple, 4-patterned pill. Upon hearing him, the crowd was startled. A 4th-grade spirit pill was something that only the family master could refine. However, it was extremely taxing on him, and he would usually only be able to refine 1 pill after 6 days of seclusion. The family master, who was extremely busy every day, didn't have the time to refine such a pill in a year. In fact, he could only refine 3 or 4 of them at most, and he would only use them when necessary. As for the fairy expansion pill, which was used for the younger generation's breakthroughs, he didn't even consider it. However, the family master had unexpectedly refined an additional one. 4th grade. Won't this pill's chances of advancing into the fairy realm increase by more than a single fold? Someone in the crowd exclaimed in surprise. It's not just a 10% chance. A 1st-grade fairy expansion pill has a 30% chance of advancing into the 2nd grade, a 10% chance of advancing into the 3rd grade, and a 15% chance of advancing into the 4th grade. If I'm not mistaken, then this 4th grade fairy expansion pill has a 60% chance of advancing into the next realm. As long as one's luck isn't bad, he will be able to advance into the next realm. As for whether he will be able to survive the heavenly tribulation, that's another matter entirely. The appearance of such a pill caused many of the younger generation's pupils to contract. Even Yuan Wanbi's face was filled with delight, and her pretty eyes flickered with delight. A 4th grade spirit pill was still too far away for her. As she looked at her father, she was quite grateful. She knew that this pill must have been prepared for her, as she had always gotten the first place in every seasonal exam. She was grateful to him, and she couldn't help but admire him. After all, she was the only middle-stage alchemist in the family who could refine 4th grade spirit pills. She really hoped that she could reach this level. However, among the crowd, only Su Yu and Yuan Yingying, who had a guilty conscience, looked at each other with odd expressions on their faces. Chapter 752. The Yuan family's master was quite satisfied with this, so he announced the start of the competition. The reward of a 4th grade spirit elixir greatly stimulated the group of juniors to fight with all their might. Su Yu, who was standing outside of the arena, nodded from time to time. Their fighting prowess was remarkable, and their cultivations were also quite impressive. At least 10% of the Yuan family's 1,000 participants were at the half-fairy realm, which was quite impossible in the Zhenlong world. The battles lasted from dawn until dusk, and in the end, only 10 people were left. Yuan Wanbi was invincible, and even people at the same level as her couldn't face her. Apart from her, there were 2 other 3 crystals half-fairies, while the rest were all 2 crystals half-fairies. Wait. When the 10 strongest people stood on the arena, a commotion broke out among the crowd. They all looked at one person in disbelief. It was the second Miss, Yuan Yingying. Her cultivation wasn't too bad, as she was a 1 crystal half-fairy, which meant that she was stronger than most of her peers in the family. However, she had never managed to enter the top 100. Now that she was standing in the top 10, they were all dumbfounded. Even the Yuan family's master was dumbfounded. He was so focused on the 7 intermediate alchemists that he didn't notice that his daughter had managed to surpass all her opponents and reach the top 10. He was both shocked and pleasantly surprised. The other uncles in the family were also shocked, but no one doubted her. This was because they all thought of the same person. It was her master, the Almighty Divine Master. It was obvious that he was the one who guided Yuan Yingying, which allowed her power to advance by leaps and bounds. Yuan Wanbi, who was on the same arena as her, was greatly shaken, and she looked at her younger sister in disbelief. Half a month ago, she had been a weak and useless follower that she loathed, but now, she was standing in front of her and ranked among the top 10. Jealousy, resentment, anger, worry, and many other emotions welled up in her heart. All right, let's start the final battle. The Yuan family's master's gaze was filled with expectation as he paid close attention to Yuan Yingying's competition. The outcome of the battle shocked everyone. She had managed to easily defeat all of her opponents, and all 2 crystals half-fairy realm experts were defeated in just a few moves. Yuan Yingying's cultivation techniques were quite detailed, and they weren't particularly outstanding. But her cultivation shocked everyone. A peak 3 crystals half-fairy realm expert? The Yuan family's master was dumbfounded. Many of the uncles in the clan also widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. If he remembered correctly, half a month ago, he hadn't even reached the 1 crystal half-fairy realm. Yet, in such a short time, he had already reached the peak of the half-fairy realm. He was only a step away from becoming a fairy. Everyone was shocked and envious at the same time. It was great to be able to receive guidance from a divine master. Even a mortal could rise to the heavens. Of course, Yuan Wanbi was also quite sharp, and she defeated all of her opponents in just a few moves. Finally, in the end, only the 2 sisters remained. All right, little sister, it's hard for me not to be envious. I've painstakingly cultivated for 10 years, but I can't compare to your one stroke of good luck." Yuan Wanbi felt extremely uncomfortable. She had never expected that her useless younger sister would be able to fight against her. Yuan Yingying sighed silently. Who would know how hard she had worked behind the scenes? All they saw was luck, but in reality, even if her cultivation had increased in half a month, half of it was due to the pills she had worked hard to refine. There was no such thing as a divine master-teacher. The only person who understood her was that grandpa. Yuan Yingying felt a sense of closeness in her heart. Apart from her father, Su Yu was the person she was closest to. As Yuan Yingying looked at her elder sister, who was filled with hatred, her desire to get her elder sister's approval became weaker. So, what did it matter if she didn't get her elder sister's approval? She had her father, Uncle Su, and her beloved alchemy technique. All of these things were enough for her. Let's fight. Let me see how powerful my younger sister has become after not seeing her for half a month. Yuan Wanbi's eyes shone with confidence as she looked at the 4th-grade spirit pill. If she got this pill, she would surely be able to advance to the fairy realm. She was determined to get it. However, Yuan Yingying revealed a faint smile and said, "I admit defeat. Big sister, you can take that pill." As he said that, he walked down the stage on his own, much to the astonishment of the crowd. Even Yuan Wanbi herself was startled by this, as she had assumed that her younger sister would fight over this precious pill with all her might. Only the Yuan family's master sighed. His heart was filled with pity and guilt. He knew that his younger daughter didn't want to hurt her sisterly feelings, so she gave up on the pill. It was just like how she had accepted her elder sister's engagement. However, all of this didn't earn her elder sister's gratitude. Yuan Wanbi understood what Yuan Yingying was thinking, so she curled up the corners of her mouth and said, "You're still as cowardly and loathsome as always." Yuan Yingying's body trembled slightly as she walked down the stage. She clenched her fists, but in the end she put them down and quietly went back to Su Yu's side. Why didn't she fight? She wouldn't be able to withstand even a single soul attack, Su Yu said calmly. Yuan Yingying lowered her head and looked at her feet. She forced a smile and said, "It's because we're sisters. If Big Sister wants that pill, I can just let her have it. In any case, I have Uncle Su here, so I don't lack elixirs." Su Yu revealed an amiable smile and said, "When I taught you the soul attack technique, I knew that you would do such a thing. Although it wasn't what I wanted, I'm glad that you were able to persevere and not let your pure heart be clouded by hatred." Yuan Yingying's dispirited mood suddenly recovered, and she stuck her tongue out at Su Yu. "Are you praising me or criticizing me?" Su Yu didn't reply to her, as he just calmly watched the last part of the award ceremony. The Yuan family's master stood up and wore a smile on his face. Everyone's performance was brilliant. My Yuan family's children should be like this. Congratulations to Yuan Wanbi for this time's prize. The Yuan family's master held the jade bottle, but he didn't immediately hand it over to Yuan Wanbi. Instead, he said, "Moreover, I have another delightful piece of news. Our Yuan family has produced a second intermediate alchemist." When the crowd heard this, they all went into an uproar. What? An intermediate alchemist? Another intermediate alchemist? The crowd cried out in shock. They were even more shocked than when Yuan Yingying had killed her way into her previous life. Who is it? Our Yuan family has produced another intermediate alchemist. The crowd let out a tsunami-like roar. This was the Yuan family's most joyous occasion in the past few decades. The reason why the Elixir Production Alliance was able to suppress the Yuan family was because they had two intermediate alchemists. Now that a new intermediate alchemist had appeared in the Yuan family, what did this signify? It signified that the Yuan family would be able to win this round. The Yuan family's master looked at the crowd with a smile and said, "Quiet down, as this is a joyous occasion for our Yuan family. After the Blue Mountain meet ends tomorrow, we will surely hold a banquet for the whole family. He didn't state the identity of the new intermediate alchemist, as he didn't know who it was. He just wanted to use this method to tell that alchemist that the Yuan family was sincerely inviting him to stay. This was all he could do. The 7 primary alchemists, who were the most suspicious among the crowd, were all clapping their hands and applauding him. Only Su Yu and Yuan Yingying were confused. "Uncle Su, what should we do? Why don't you come out now?" Yuan Yingying didn't know what to do. Su Yu muttered to himself for a moment, then shook his head and said, "There is no need. Just come out on the day of the banquet. You have been in the limelight for a long time, so let your family members digest this news first." Yuan Yingying nodded obediently and said, "I will listen to you." In the end, Yuan Wanbi got the elixir. She held it in her hand and walked over to Su Yu and Yuan Yingying discreetly. She then looked at Yuan Yingying with a faint smile and said, "Sister, I am indebted to you for letting me have it, so I won't stand on ceremony. With this elixir, the gap between us will be widened once again." Yuan Yingying just chuckled and didn't reply. "Regardless of what kind of teacher you have, you were once inferior to me, and you will still be inferior to me in the future." Yuan Wanbi chuckled and held the elixir delightedly. She then planned to leave. However, at this moment, an urgent report from a guard came from outside. "Family Master, young Master Zhao has arrived with a group of people." The only person who could be addressed as young Master Zhao was the Elixir Production Alliance's Zhao Yin. His cultivation had reached the level 2 fairy realm, which meant that he was even more powerful than many of the elders. The group of guards couldn't resist him any longer, so Zhao Yin brought 2 servants with him and charged into the martial field. "Zhao Yin, what kind of place do you take my Yuan family for? Even your father isn't qualified to barge in here, yet you are even more unyielding than him." The Yuan family's master's expression became gloomy and he flew into a rage. The Yuan family was indeed being oppressed by the Elixir Production Alliance, and they were even forced to sacrifice their second miss to ease the tension. However, barging into the Yuan family was a great humiliation. No matter how cowardly the Yuan family was, it was impossible for them to swallow their anger. "Humph, Zhao Yin, since you dared to barge in here today, you should be prepared to never get out. Big clans have their own pride. You have done something you shouldn't have," defeating armies said in a stern voice. The members of the Yuan clan all cast angry gazes at him. This was simply going too far. Zhao Yin had a radiant smile on his face. He didn't take the Yuan family seriously at all, and he casually tossed out a small token from his pocket. The Yuan family head didn't even turn his head as he sucked it in through the air and spread it on his palm. Only then did he lower his gaze to take a look. After reading it, Patriarch Yuan's pupils shrank. After a long moment of silence, he casually tossed the token back and said in a deep voice, "Fine, I'll give you a chance to speak. If you can't tell me the reason why you barged into the Yuan clan, no matter who the owner of the token is, don't even think of leaving here alive. I Yuan am a man of my word." Zhao Yin, who had kept the token, had a calm expression on his face. He chuckled and said, "Yuan family head, you're being too serious. I'm merely here to issue a challenge. It's just that a few of your Yuan family servants were blind and wanted to stop me. I am your future son-in-law. Isn't it just a matter of time before I enter the Yuan family? Why are you taking it so seriously?" As he spoke, he looked at Yuan Yingying with a smile. Yuan Yingying hid behind Su Yu subconsciously and hugged his arm. It seemed like she was relying on him. Zhao Yin's gaze became ice-cold as he looked at Su Yu. Yuan Wanbi was violated by this old bastard, and even my fiancée has been won over by him? His old and new hatred welled up in his heart. Zhao Yin sneered coldly and averted his gaze. He then looked at the Yuan family head and said, "As I said, I came here to issue a challenge on the orders of that great lord." Chapter 753. Zhao Yin chuckled. This challenge letter is quite special, as it contains a bet. A bet? Please go back. My family doesn't need to bet with you. The Yuan family's master rejected him without hesitation. The Yuan family was in a disadvantageous position, as they had fewer chips than the Elixir Production Alliance. Although the bet seemed fair to both sides, it wasn't. If the Yuan family lost one of their chips, their situation would become even worse. They would lose their last chance to turn the situation around, and they would fall into a disadvantageous position. As for the Elixir Production Alliance, even if they lost one of their chips, it wouldn't harm their foundation, and they would still be able to suppress the Yuan family. So, why would he agree to a bet that would only bring harm to the Yuan family? Why don't you listen to the contents of the bet? Zhao Yin said mysteriously. If your family wins, you can choose one of the 9 markets controlled by the Elixir Production Alliance, and it will be your family's territory. Don't tell me that you don't know how much profit a market can make every year? Upon hearing this, the infuriated Yuan family members gradually calmed down. A market? Just the rent alone was more than 30,000 crystals. This was a great fortune. Moreover, the Yuan family could sell a large number of their elixirs and monopolize the market, which would bring them even greater profits. Even the Yuan family's master was tempted. Ever since the two sides started fighting, there had never been a case where a market had been taken away. If they could get one market, it would greatly improve the Yuan family's situation. What if we lose? Will we give you a market? The Yuan family's master asked. Zhao Yin shook his head. No, if we lose, we will only ask for one person. Ask for one person? The crowd looked at each other in dismay. The Yuan family already had their master and several core elders, so who could possibly be worth a market? Who? The Yuan family's master asked. Zhao Yin chuckled coldly and pointed at Su Yu. I want him. The crowd immediately went into an uproar, as the person Zhao Yin wanted was unexpectedly Su Yu. The Yuan family's master was still confused. Young Master Zhao, are you trying to fool us? Explain yourself clearly. Zhao Yin had come here with such a large force just to ask for a janitor? Zhao Yin's face was ice cold, and he sneered as he walked toward Su Yu. He looked at Su Yu coldly and said, I want him. Are you clear? Everyone was extremely puzzled and stared at the two of them without blinking. He had just finished speaking when he saw Su Yu take a few steps back and touch his nose. Mr. Zhao, he said, I am a pure man, and I do not have such fetishes. You want me, but I do not want you. Pucci Yuan Yingying couldn't hold back her laughter. She immediately covered her mouth and glared at Zhao Yin. Are you crazy? What do you want to do to Uncle Su? I don't want to do anything, I just want him. When Zhao Yin noticed that the people around him were laughing at him, he became angry. I want him to work for my Elixir Production Alliance. The people of the Yuan clan finally understood that there seemed to be some hatred between the two of them. Yuan Wanbi blinked her pretty eyes and walked over with an ice-cold expression. She stood in front of Su Yu and scolded him. Zhao Yin, are you crazy? Why did you find trouble with him for no reason? It would have been better if she hadn't helped Su Yu, but now that she had obstructed him, Zhao Yin was infuriated. He was now even more certain that Su Yu had gotten hold of Yuan Wanbi's weakness, and he had probably already taken advantage of her, forcing her to submit to him and obey him. As he thought of this, hatred welled up in his heart. I already said that I only have one request. Yuan family's master, do you accept it or not? Just say it. The Yuan family's master's heart thumped, as he knew that he could exchange an unrelated person for the entire market. This was a choice that everyone would make. No. Father, you mustn't accept it. Otherwise, I won't live anymore. Yuan Yingying was quite decisive. The Yuan family's master looked at his daughter, then at Su Yu. He pondered this for a moment before he sighed and said, Young Master Zhao, please go back. Such a bet is meaningless. He knew that his daughter had been with this old man in the family recently, and they had a good relationship. If he lost this bet, his pitiful daughter would have no one to talk to, and she might even hate him. Yuan Wanbi was infuriated by her meddlesome younger sister. However, Zhao Yin was determined to take advantage of the Yuan family. Is that so? I advise you to consider it carefully. Otherwise, you won't need to participate in tomorrow's Blue Mountain meet. You know better than anyone else the relationship between that great elder and the Elixir Production Alliance. Zhao Yin didn't hide his threat at all. The Yuan family's master squinted his eyes, while killing intent welled up in his heart. Why would the Yuan family lower its head to the Elixir Production Alliance and be forced to marry off one of their daughters? One of the reasons was that great elder's interference. Otherwise, with the Yuan family's master's temperament, he wouldn't have compromised with the Elixir Production Alliance. The family's core elders also shot meaningful glances at each other, as they were all afraid of that great elder. The Yuan family's master was struggling to make up his mind. However, at this moment Su Yu spoke. Yuan family's master, why do you need to worry? Since the Elixir Production Alliance is offering you a market, then you should just accept it. The Yuan family's master opened his eyes and looked at Su Yu. This old man had an extraordinary bearing, and he always gave him a different feeling. Now that he had spoken so confidently, could it be that he had a way to deal with him? After the Yuan family's master mulled it over for a moment, he nodded and said, "Fine. Zhao Yin, if you can represent the Elixir Production Alliance, then we will sign this bet. If you can't, then you can go back to where you came from." Zhao Yin sneered coldly. "You can set your mind at ease, as I have already gotten the Elixir Production Alliance's approval." As he spoke, he threw an oath scroll at Su Yu. Su Yu wasn't unfamiliar with this object, as it was extremely restrictive, and even fairies wouldn't be able to break free from it. The Elixir Production Alliance's 2 big shots blood drops were written on it, and its contents were already written down. Now, all that was left was for the Yuan family's master to agree to it. The Yuan family's master bit his finger and dripped a drop of his blood into it. The oath scroll turned into 2 phantom images, each of which flew into the hands of a person. Ha ha! Good! Yuan family's master is really straightforward. Tomorrow, our 2 clans will compete in the arena, and whoever can last until the end will be the winner. Zhao Yin held the ancient scroll's phantom image in his hand and laughed heartily as he left. Before he left, he glared at Su Yu coldly, as if he was telling him that Su Yu's death had come. What is the Elixir Production Alliance planning to do by using a whole street in exchange for Su Yu's life? Su Yu squinted his eyes as he felt like something was amiss. It was fine if Zhao Yin was the only one who acted rashly, but why were the 2 intermediate alchemists also so muddle-headed as to allow Zhao Yin to do as he pleased? The Yuan family's master also had this question, as he felt like something was amiss. After they left the Yuan family, one of Zhao Yin's lackeys couldn't help but sneer coldly. The Yuan family's stupid pigs really thought that they had gotten a great bargain. They didn't know that they had just missed out on a great opportunity. That old man is probably the Central Prefecture's most wanted criminal, and his head is worth 10 million crystals. 10 million, just thinking about it. Shut up. How can you leak this matter? If Liao Zhang learns about it, he will exterminate your whole family. Zhao Yin said coldly. Yes. The lackeys quickly shut up. After they returned to the house, Yuan Yingying wore an apologetic look as she said, "Uncle Su, I won't let them snatch you away from me tomorrow." Su Yu comforted her for a while, then said with a faint smile, "I'll be fine, as I have Yingying." Yuan Yingying clenched her fists, while her gaze became firm. After she left, Su Yu got lost in his thoughts. For some unknown reason, his chest felt stuffy. After cultivating for so long, he would always have some premonitions about the future. Such a stuffy chest was an ominous sign, as it foretold danger. But, what could be in the Blue Mountain Range that could make him feel danger? Zhao Yin's arrival made Su Yu restless, and he felt like a storm was brewing. After Su Yu got lost in his thoughts for a long while, he fell asleep. "Brother Su Yu, it's me. Jing Yu, you should quickly escape." In his dream, Su Yu appeared in a boundless wasteland. All of a sudden, a voice echoed out. It was Xia Jingyu. "Jingyu, is this a dream?" Su Yu, who was still in his dream, asked in surprise. It seemed like a dream, yet it also didn't seem like a dream. "Brother Su Yu, I used our divine decree to connect our minds, but it can only last for 10 breaths. So, listen carefully and don't miss out on anything I say," Xia Jingyu urged him. Su Yu was startled, as this isn't a dream. But a divine decree can connect us, even though we are separated by millions of miles? It's too miraculous. Did Xia Jingyu's divine decree improve again? "Brother Su Yu, you are now in grave danger, as I foretold that your path was suddenly cut off. This means that you will surely die." Xia Jingyu's expression became grave. "Although I don't know the reason behind this, my foresight isn't wrong. So, you must take it to heart." Su Yu asked, "Since my path was cut off, does that mean that I will surely die?" Xia Jingyu quickly replied, "No. A purple light has appeared in your path, and it has obscured your destiny. It is too powerful, and I am unable to predict its true appearance. I only know that it is definitely Brother Su Yu's turning point. So, Brother Su Yu, when you encounter a purple object, remember to seize it. You must remember." Her voice suddenly stopped, as if it had been cut off by something. As for Su Yu, he was still standing on the desolate grassland, not knowing what to do. At that moment, the sky suddenly became extremely glaring. There was clearly only one sun in the sky, but now 5 golden suns appeared at the same time. The intense heat they emitted turned the entire wasteland into a sea of flames. Su Yu was quickly engulfed by the raging flames. Su Yu was startled, and he suddenly opened his eyes from his dream. What happened? What did Jingyu foresee? What were those 5 golden suns? Was that a dream or reality? Su Yu sat on the edge of his bed, uncertain. It seemed like a dream, yet it wasn't a dream. It seemed like an illusion, yet it wasn't. That was especially true when the raging flames burned his body. The pain was so real that it didn't seem like a dream. All of a sudden, Su Yu felt a burning pain on his palm. When he lowered his head to take a look, he discovered that a burn mark had appeared on his palm. It was left behind when he was engulfed by the raging flames in his dream. That wasn't a dream. Hundreds of millions of miles away, there was a desolate grassland, which was exactly the same as the wilderness in Su Yu's dream. 5 people, who were shining with golden light, were standing in the wilderness. They were all closing their eyes and chanting some kind of incantation. All of them had a sun and moon crown on their head. 5 terrifying all-creation old monsters were standing side by side. All of a sudden, the 5 of them opened their eyes at the same time. One of them spoke in a deep, muffled voice, "I found it. I left a mark in the blue mountain range of the 18 blessed and heavenly land." Chapter 754. The next morning, the sky was blue. Banners fluttered in the wind of Green Mountain Range City as the voices of the people boomed. Countless cultivators headed for the dueling grounds in the center of the city. This was the largest martial arts arena in Tsongshan City. It had existed since the establishment of Tsongshan City. It had a long history and was the holy land in the eyes of Tsongshan City's martial artists. Every day there would be countless warriors fighting in the city, increasing their strength through actual combat. Today, Tsongshan City welcomed the grandest day of the year. The Tsongshan Conference. The meeting was organized by the Soul Seizing Palace, and it was held once a year. Its purpose was to recruit outstanding youths from the Blue Mountain Range, and as long as one was able to come out on top in the meeting, he would be able to successfully enter the Soul Seizing Palace and become an Outer Sanctum disciple. From then on, one's status would skyrocket, like a carp leaping through the Dragon Gate. Crossing this threshold was equivalent to 9 dragons soaring into the sky, receiving the nurturing of a large sect, becoming a dragon amongst men. The 108 forces in the city were all looking forward to this day. The reason why the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance were able to stand out from the rest was that they had trained a large number of the soul-seizing palace's outer sanctum disciples. After these disciples returned to the Tsang mountain range, they supported their families and quickly rose to power. After a few generations of hard work, the two factions had their current achievements. For the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance, this day was extremely important. 2 tigers couldn't live on the same mountain, and they had been fighting openly and secretly for hundreds of years. The gap between them had been widened little by little, and a soul-seizing palace's quota was enough to widen the gap between them even further. This was especially true for the Yuan family, as they were determined to win this slot. Moreover, the Yuan family still had a bet. If they could obtain the final victory, they would obtain a market in the Elixir Production Alliance. That was an immeasurable amount of wealth. Thus, no matter what, the Yuan family had to win. When they arrived at the martial arts arena, the Yuan family members were extremely nervous and looked forward to this battle. Many people fixed their gazes on Yuan Wanbi, and they all had high expectations for her. Wanbi, act within your means and don't put too much pressure on yourself. It doesn't matter even if you lose. The Yuan family's master loved his daughter the most, so he comforted her with a gentle voice. Yuan Wanbi clenched her fist. She also wanted to fight for her family's honor and turn her family's situation around. Her father's words touched her heart. However, when he caught a glimpse of Su Yu, his heart became cold again. Compared to the family's interests, his own future was more important. She had to get rid of this man, only then would she be able to preserve her clean reputation, marry into the Shangguan clan, and soar into the sky. On the contrary, the value of a street market was far less than what she could bring by marrying into the Yuan family. Therefore, no matter what, she had to lose this battle. What made her feel gratified was that even if she used her full strength, she most likely wouldn't be able to win. This was because the Elixir Production Alliance had an extremely valiant Zhao Yin, who was almost 20 years old. He had barely reached the recruitment age limit, but he could still participate in the battle. His cultivation was only at the level 2 fairy realm, so the Yuan family probably wouldn't have any chance of winning. The Yuan clan had long lost this battle. Thinking of this, Zhang Xian felt much more at ease. Yuan Yingying stared blankly at the tens of millions of people on the super martial arts stage. She was extremely nervous, but when she looked at the back of the old man who blocked half of her body, her heart surged with endless courage. "Uncle Su, just wait and see, I'll snatch you back," Yuan Yingying swore in her heart. Su Yu stood there with his eyes closed, but the strange incident from the previous night was still lingering in his heart. Opening his eyes, Zhang Xian looked at the burn mark on his palm. Even after a night had passed, the burn mark did not subside in the slightest. Instead, it felt even more painful. He could vaguely see a thin flame slowly spreading in his palm. The bad premonition in his heart grew stronger and stronger. A shadow of great threat silently shrouded him. What was the purple object that Jingyu had mentioned? The only purple objects that Su Yu had come in contact with were the level 4 fairy expansion pill, as well as his left eye, which contained time power. Was it related to those 2 objects? Su Yu shook his head and denied this possibility. If he could resolve such a crisis so easily, Jingyu wouldn't have told him that the purple object was so powerful that she couldn't discern its true appearance. My body will soon recover, so I must immediately try to advance into the fairy realm after the competition. Then, I must quickly leave, Su Yu said in a deep voice. The competition had finally started. The representatives of the 108 factions stepped forward one after another. Each family could only send 10 people at most, so it was a large-scale arena battle with 1,080 people. Su Yu was only concerned about Yuan Yingying. She had fought 10 battles in a row and had won every one of them. She could be considered a dark horse among the tens of thousands of people here. Suyu was also paying attention to Zhao Yin. He was a level 2 fairy, and he stood out among all of the participants. There wasn't even a single person in the same realm as him, so he would surely win. The great battle continued like a raging fire, and it was only when the sun had set that the competition reached its final stage. This bitter competition had eliminated most of the participants, and they had lost all hope of entering the soul-seizing palace. Only 100 people were left in the arena. Among them, there were 9 3-crystals half-fairies and 1 fairy. Many of the factions' moods became slightly better as they looked at such a strange competition. Zhao Yin was a talented youth, and it seemed like the Yuan family would suffer the same fate as them. The only gratifying thing was that the top 10 strong martial artists would be able to receive an additional test from the soul-seizing palace's elder. If they were to be found to have outstanding attributes, such as having an extraordinary specialty in a certain area, they would be able to make an exception and enter the soul-seizing palace. Such a thing had happened in the past, so even though they knew that the Elixir Production Alliance had Zhao Yin, many families still accepted the challenge. Getting into the top 10 was an opportunity for them. The bet between the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance was just to see who would have the last laugh. Even if the Yuan family's fighting prowess wasn't a match for the Elixir Production Alliance, it wouldn't be considered a loss if they managed to get a spot in the soul-seizing palace. The Yuan family's master was looking at the final battle in anticipation. The battles here were much fiercer and more difficult than the family's test the day before. Yuan Wanbi was known as the Yuan family's #1 expert, yet she still felt pressured in the Blue Mountain meet. Even though she managed to defeat several opponents at the same realm as her, it still wasn't easy. Surprisingly, the Yuan family's second miss, who was ranked second, managed to defeat 3 opponents at the same realm as her with ease. She didn't even need to fight, yet her opponents were already scared and forced to retreat. The crowd was flabbergasted by such a sight. Yuan Wanbi was quite surprised, and she couldn't understand why her father was so biased. Did he secretly give a treasure to his younger sister? The first battle of the semi-finals will be Yuan Wanbi against Yuan Yingying. Such a battle made the spectators quite spirited. Tsk. The Blue Mountain Range's most beautiful woman has a younger sister, who is the complete opposite of her. Interesting. I can't believe that we will get to see a battle between these 2 sisters. What's strange is that I remember that Yuan Yingying's power was quite ordinary. So, how did she manage to reach such a level? The Yuan family's members were the only ones whose expressions didn't change. They had all witnessed Yuan Yingying's fighting prowess in the family's test, so it wasn't strange for her to reach such a level. As for who was stronger and who was weaker, there wasn't much suspense. After all, Yuan Yingying had admitted defeat in the previous day's test. She didn't even have the courage to fight. The referee on the stage announced the start of the battle. However, the 2 sisters didn't immediately start fighting. Yuan Wanbi sized her younger sister up and said, "I have to admit that you have already changed. In the past, you were a yes man and mediocre, but now, you can stand before the Blue Mountain Range's great meet and fight against me. You have really changed. But, what does it matter how much you have changed? Younger sister, I told you yesterday that you were inferior to me in the past, and you are still inferior to me today. So, just accept your fate. The Yuan family only has me, Yuan Wanbi, and you are just an illegitimate child. You will never be able to become the family's backbone." Yuan Wanbi didn't try to hide her disgust for Yuan Yingying anymore. Of course, she also lowered her voice when she spoke, so that no one could hear her except Yuan Yingying. Yuan Yingying's expression was calm, and she pursed her lips into a faint smile. "Big sister, you still look at me like that. I knew it the first time we met. But, it doesn't matter, as you are my big sister, and I will always respect you." Yuan Wanbi snorted disdainfully. "I don't need your respect. Alright, let's cut the crap. Are you going to admit defeat, or do you want me to beat you? Yuan Yingying said, I would have given you the soul-seizing palace's quota, but today, I must defeat you for someone. After she spoke, Yuan Yingying unsheathed her sword. You overestimate yourself. Your comprehension of cultivation techniques is far inferior to mine. Yuan Wanbi didn't have the confidence to fight against Zhao Yin, but she was confident that she could defeat her younger sister easily. Yuan Yingying revealed a faint smile and charged forward with her sword. Clang! A sword cry echoed in the sky, while two silver sword lights flickered in the air. In an instant, the two figures separated. Yuan Yingying flew back several steps and landed on the edge of the stage, while blood flowed out of her perlicue. As for Yuan Wanbi, she floated down and wore a mocking look on her face. I told you that you overestimate yourself. However, in the next moment, Yuan Wanbi's body shook, and she felt a sharp pain in her head. What's going on? What did you do? Yuan Wanbi asked in surprise. Yuan Yingying waved her sword and said calmly, I didn't do anything. Su Yu nodded inwardly. Yuan Yingying was unexpectedly able to fuse a wisp of the white-eyed fire-glass frog's soul flame onto her sword. This was why anyone who fought against it would be burned by its weak soul flame. Although it wouldn't be fatal, it would still affect one's power. Su Yu hadn't taught her about this, so she had figured it out by herself. This lass really had great talent in terms of soul attainment. Poison? Fine, let's fight again. Yuan Wanbi activated her vital energy protective barrier, hoping that she would be able to resist the poison released by her opponent. However, after another exchange, Yuan Wanbi was sent flying by the sword energy, and she felt a sharp pain in her head. Sister, just admit defeat. I don't want to injure you. A wisp of sword light was pointed at Yuan Wanbi's forehead. Yuan Wanbi raised her head and looked at her younger sister, who was holding her sword. Her cute face was still the same, but her gaze had changed. Humph! I won't lose to you! Yuan Wanbi shouted angrily. She forcefully flipped her body, intending to fight once again. However, while she was still rolling on the ground, she felt a sharp pain in her waist, and Yuan Yingying kicked her in the waist, sending her flying off the stage. Since Yuan Yingying had already pointed at her forehead, if it had been a fight to the death, she would have already died. Chapter 755. As for the members of the Yuan family, their hearts were filled with shock. At this moment, Yuan Yingying was a complete stranger in their eyes. Putting aside Yuan Yingying's true strength, she actually dared to attack their elder sister. In their memories, Yuan Yingying was nothing more than a follower. She was so timid in front of her that she didn't even dare to speak loudly. Yuan family head was also shocked. His youngest daughter had changed, but it was a change for the better. Yuan Yingying's eyes were filled with indifference as she looked at her elder sister, who was staring at her with hatred. Elder sister, you're just SOSO. After defeating her elder sister, the shackles in Yuan Yingying's heart were completely broken. Her elder sister, who used to be like a huge mountain in her eyes, was now just a figure who couldn't afford to lose. After the knot in her heart was resolved, Yuan Yingying walked down the stage and stood beside Su Yu with a smile. The audience burst into loud cheers. Who would have thought that the Yuan family would have such a crouching tiger and hidden dragon? The real expert is actually the second miss. He is also a pitiful child. It seems like the bitterness is over and the sweetness is coming. Someone who knew the situation sighed in relief. The uncles of the Yuan family's older generation had complicated expressions on their faces, and the way they looked at Yuan Yingying began to change. Zhao Yin was slightly surprised as he looked at Yuan Yingying. Since when did his little sister, who had no sense of existence, become so powerful? Looking at her now, he suddenly felt that marrying her wasn't a bad thing. Although she wasn't beautiful, she wasn't scheming and was easier to control than his elder sister. Yingying, you did well, but I won't go easy on you next. Zhao Yin walked over and patted her shoulder. Yuan Yingying moved stealthily, causing Zhao Yin's palm to miss. Oh, dissatisfied with my lack of concern? Hee, let's get to know each other after the conference. Zhao Yin revealed a smile that he thought was warm. Yuan Yingying looked at him calmly and said, It's better if you get close to this sister. I won't stop you. Upon hearing this, Zhao Yin's expression changed drastically. How did she know that he was meeting with Yuan Wanbi in secret? Yuan Yingying, who seemed simple and honest, was actually very intelligent. Zhao Yin stared seriously at Yuan Yingying for a long time before he said, No matter what you think, it won't change our relationship. In the near future, you'll be my woman. With that, he swaggered off. Yuan Yingying's expression was calm, but she clenched her fists tightly. Her heart was filled with anger and fear. Suddenly, a coarse hand grasped her palm. Don't worry, he isn't good enough for you, so your engagement won't be valid, Su Yu said. Before he left, he would naturally deal with this troublemaker. He didn't plan to leave Zhao Yin alive. It could be considered as getting rid of a problem for Yuan Yingying. Next, it was time for Zhao Yin to fight against the other 3 crystals half-fairy. Facing the displeased Zhao Yin, his opponent tactfully admitted defeat in front of everyone. The duel between Zhao Yin and Yuan Yingying begins. Both of them leaped onto the stage at the same time. This battle affected the hearts of the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance. It wasn't easy for Yingying to come this far. Regardless of whether she wins or loses this battle, we should take her seriously. The person who spoke was not the family head, but defeating armies, who looked down on Yuan Yingying the most. He had seen great potential in Yuan Yingying, and it was even more outstanding than Yuan Wanbi's. Since she had some value, he couldn't treat her like he had in the past. Many elders nodded in agreement. Their discussions were all about the future, and they did not pay much attention to the battle at hand. That was because there was no suspense in this battle, and there was nothing to look forward to. What they were looking forward to was the soul-seizing palace's elder, who would come out to test Yuan Yingying. They wanted to know whether Yuan Yingying's outstanding performance would be able to win their respect. As for the Elixir Production Alliance's members, they were all nervously watching this battle, and their eyes were filled with excitement as they looked at Su Yu from time to time. Su Yu used his private perception to look at them meaningfully. Yingying, just admit defeat. I don't want to harm you, as you are, after all, my fiancé. Zhao Yin tried to be magnanimous. Yuan Yingying wore a calm expression as she said, Just fight me, as you must lose for Uncle Su. For him? Zhao Yin sneered inwardly. The Yuan family probably still didn't know how much this fugitive they had taken in was worth. Since Yingying has said this, then I will have to send her off. Zhao Yin chuckled calmly as he charged forward. However, Yuan Yingying suddenly turned around and quietly walked down the stage. Her strange behavior startled everyone, as they all wondered, is she admitting defeat? Zhao Yin also found this strange, so he asked, Yingying, do you want to admit defeat now? Yuan Yingying replied without turning her head, No, the battle has already come to an end. Putong, before the people present could understand what was going on, Zhao Yin's face suddenly changed. His face turned red, and then his eyes rolled back as he fainted on the spot. The referee was stunned for a moment before he stepped forward and confirmed that Zhao Yin had fainted. Yuan Yingying wins. The champion of the Blue Mountain Conference, Yuan Yingying. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd went wild. What? The Yuan family won? How did he win? Why did Zhao Yin suddenly collapse? Could it be that Zhao Yin is deliberately going easy on him? That last scene was really well acted. That might be the case. However, the Elixir Production Alliance is really generous. They gave the soul-seizing palace's quota to the Yuan family just like that. Could it be that they did this on purpose as a betrothal gift? Only the Yuan family and the Elixir Production Alliance were shocked. The Yuan family was certain that the Elixir Production Alliance was not going easy on them. If they lost, they would lose an entire market. The only possibility was that Yuan Yingying had used some sort of powerful technique to defeat Zhao Yin. Shuar, the Elixir Production Alliance's green-robed scholar, who was also Zhao Yin's father, flew onto the stage and examined his son's injuries with a grave expression. Shuar, the red-nosed middle-aged man, also rushed over and examined his son with a grave expression. Upon seeing this, the crowd quieted down. They couldn't see anything strange about this matter, and their expressions didn't show that they had known about this matter beforehand. The only possible explanation was that Zhao Yin had really been defeated. He was knocked down by Yuan Yingying before he could even let out a fart. What's going on with this world? Someone wore an incredulous look on his face. The crowd immediately started discussing this matter. The green-robed scholar's expression became gloomy. He turned his head around and glared at Yuan Yingying like an infuriated lion. He scolded her angrily, "Speak! What did you do to my son?" Yuan Yingying's body shivered. Her internal organs were shaken by the opponent's imposing aura, and a wisp of blood flowed out of the corners of her mouth. Humph! At this moment, a cold snort transmitted from the Yuan family's direction. The Yuan family's people rushed over and confronted the Elixir Production Alliance. "Zhao, you have grown up. Not only are you unable to accept defeat, but you even attacked a junior? Do you still want to save your face?" The Yuan family's master's face was filled with anger as he examined Yuan Yingying's injuries. Zhao replied angrily, "Anyone with a discerning eye could discern that there was something fishy going on. Speak. What shameful technique did you teach your daughter? I don't believe that a 3 crystals half-fairy could defeat a level 2 fairy realm cultivator fair and square." The Yuan family's master couldn't defend himself, as he couldn't understand how Yuan Yingying had managed to defeat her opponent. The outcome of the battle had been decided in an instant, and no one had managed to discern Yuan Yingying's technique. Such a strange victory had put the Yuan family in a passive position. "It's a soul technique that my master taught me. Uncle Zhao, if you don't believe me, you can give it a try." Yuan Yingying wiped the blood at the corners of her mouth and looked at Zhao. "Master?" The Yuan family's people shuddered in fright upon hearing this. "Master, are you trying to deceive a 3-year-old child?" Zhao was so infuriated that he started laughing. However, the Yuan family's people unexpectedly looked at him with a faint smile, as if they were saying that he really was a 3-year-old child. "Zhao, there is something that has been kept a secret, and it hasn't been announced to the public. It is that our Yingying has already been taken as a disciple by an almighty divine master, so it's understandable that she taught him some powerful technique. If you don't believe me, why don't you try it again?" The Yuan family's master then added, "Of course, for the sake of fairness, anyone who doubts me can give it a try and see whether it really possesses such might. If it's really true, then this battle's victory isn't tainted by cheating." The crowd nodded, while several experts, who weren't part of the 2 great factions, walked over. "Yingying, are you ready?" the Yuan family's master asked. Yuan Yingying nodded. "Cultivators below the early stage of the fairy realm shouldn't try it, as your life will be in danger. As for those at the middle stage of the fairy realm, you should also be prepared to be injured. Don't blame me for warning you." Shock appeared on the crowd's faces upon hearing this. "What nonsense! Why don't you give it a try?" Zhao said. Yuan Yingying swept him with her gaze and asked calmly, "Are you ready?" Zhao took a deep breath and wrapped his whole body with his vital energy. He then nodded and said, "I'm ready. Let's start." "Oh, I already used it. Didn't you notice?" Yuan Yingying chuckled. "What? You?" The Yuan family's master was infuriated. Just as he was about to berate Yuan Yingying, he suddenly felt an intense burning pain from the depths of his soul. A miserable shriek resounded throughout the martial arts arena. The Yuan family's master's face was pale, and his facial features were twisted. It was as if he was suffering from extreme pain. In the midst of the pain, he was like a demonic beast that had lost control. He went on a rampage, smashing a large portion of the spectators' stands and scaring away countless martial artists. In the end, the Yuan family's master and the others joined forces to subdue Zhao. However, he still howled for dozens of breaths. When everything stopped, he gasped for breath, as if he had lost all of his strength. His face was filled with fear and pain. "Uncles, does anyone else want to give it a try?" Yuan Yingying asked with a harmless smile. She then looked around at the people who wanted to give it a try. "Hey, wait, I don't need to give it a try. I believe in you." An old man who didn't believe in Yuan Yingying hurriedly stopped and fled from Yuan Yingying's line of sight. The other people also had frightened looks on their faces. They all distanced themselves from Yuan Yingying as if they had seen a ghost. One of them said in embarrassment, "I also don't need to give it a try. I believe in young Miss Yuan. Young Miss Yuan's talent is outstanding, so I believe in you. I really believe in you." With that, the Yuan clan's head was overjoyed. He could finally let go of the worry in his heart. As he looked at Yuan Yingying, the Yuan family's master almost couldn't help but hug his precious daughter. She had brought him so many surprises. She had gotten the soul-seizing palace's quota, as well as that street. "Yingying, you did well. Tonight, when we return to the family, we will hold a welcoming banquet for you." Pejuan laughed heartily. Today was a joyous day for the Yuan family. Last night they had announced that they had gotten an intermediate alchemist, and today, they had gotten a super genius like Yuan Yingying. If they didn't celebrate this joyous occasion, they wouldn't be able to live up to this joyous occasion. Yuan Yingying was delighted, but she didn't forget to look at Su Yu out of the corner of her eye. She knew that it was him who had given her all of this. At this moment she was filled with gratitude and love for him.